Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great to Great live tasting live from Manchester. What's up, everybody? Thanks very much for joining us on World Malbec Day. Is it still World Malbec Day? I don't know if it's still World Malbec Day. Either way, we're drinking Malbec, and so as far as you people are concerned, it's goddamn World Malbec Day. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Tom. This is Baz. We're going to be enjoying some delicious red wine with you guys, and maybe dispelling a few preconceptions about what Malbec actually is. Namely that Malbec is this super heavy, really intense, overpowering red wine, actually a lot more subtle and genteel than perhaps people do expect. We're running the gamut from its homeland in Cahors in southwestern France, Malbec of the black wine of Cahors fame, all the way through to its first jump to the New World, where we're headed across to Chile. And planted its roots there, and then over the Andes we go to perhaps its most well-known. Is it the most natural home? I don't really know. It's hard to say. It's definitely grown into itself in Argentina, and that's where most people have come across Malbec, and that's partly where people's preconceptions about Malbec often come from, namely that it's a big, heavy wine that goes really well with red meat, ideally steak that you've eaten in some kind of Argentinian steakhouse. Unfortunately, no, we don't have any steak here, Baz. I do apologize for that. What kind of operation are we running here? It's outrageous.
I'm the driver, mate.
Before we do start, just whilst we've got your attention, we've got some more tastings coming up. We've got an outrageous tasting next Friday. If you guys are at a loose end, this is going to be super duper. We're doing a producer spotlight on Cardiff Frati, one of our favorite producers from the Lugano region. Up have you
Correct.
been there? Yeah. You went there so well that you didn't go to the next 2 days worth of wine tasting.
Ruined the rest of the trip.
Yeah.
It was so good. Ruined the rest of the trip.
Because Barry went there and with Fitzy, R.I.P. He's not dead. He's just in New Zealand, and therefore missed and blackened his name for the following. Well, until this day, in fact,
With Allegrini,
I don't think they will ever
Not
accept you or anybody else from Grape to Grain to ever turn up there without, I don't know, paying a fucking deposit or something. Because Barry made friends, and he made friends with hotel staff and waiting staff who decided they were going to abuse his budget and get absolutely battered.
So where to next? The tour guide, you know.
So that's next Friday. Producer spotlight on Cardiff Frati. You can actually do it in store as well on the Saturday as well if you are around Prestwich.
Amarone della Valpolicella as well, man.
Yeah, that's one of the bonus wines. They're Amarone della Valpolicella, because they do leach over a little bit into Veneto. Then I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that on a Friday, we've then got our Cali American road trip in. Is it the 12th? Right, okay. Where we did that in store just the other day. Some instant favorites will be on that one. And if you and for you guys that are watching, use G2G fam and get yourself a cheeky little 30% discount.
30%?
G2G fam, get yourself a 30% discount. But back to tonight, we are tasting amazing white wines, red wines. Malbec is the grape that we are celebrating for World Malbec Day. Baz, talk us through the lineup, because a lot of these are yours.
They are indeed, yeah. So Malbec, as you say, we're doing a spotlight. Going to start off where it all started, in a Cahors, in the Clos de la Coutal, and we're going to move on to where it's found some new life over in Chile with Montes. Great producer, iconic. In fact, they sort of put Chilean wine, or fine Chilean wine, on the map, really. And 3 different expressions from its new spiritual home over in Argentina, particularly Mendoza and Salta as well. And the last one, the bonus wine, is arguably one of the highest vineyards in the world, and it's something I've never
I mean, it's called the Altura Maxima, which makes you think that it is going to be at altitude. And if you guys have gone for this one, it's worth pointing out that when I was working out the price for it, I was working out maybe, what's the best way to describe this? This is classic, yes.
Okay.
Classic Grape to Grain vibes, classic live tasting vibes as well, to be honest with you. I was working out based on something which was 2/3 of the price of what it actually was. So including VAT, I have lost money by selling you these wines. If you've gone for the glass or the full bottle, I have lost money. actively lost cash by getting this one because this was £80 if you went for the full bottle of this. It's actually on our shelves for about 115, 118, 120 pounds. So yeah, it's definitely not the £80 that I was selling it for.
And then with a 30% discount.
And yes, if you like any of the wines, particularly tonight, use Malbec 30, Malbec 30. You'll get 30% off all of these wines. And the price that we're discounting is the right price.
Oh, okay.
So you're getting 30% off 115. So you're actually getting, nearly 50 quid off that bottle. That's worth using a discount if ever I've heard it. No. Right. So before we start, as we are wont to do, we're going to go through how to taste wine. We've got some familiar faces, and we've also got some new faces, some faces we haven't seen in a little while. There's one name here, right there, named Lorna.
Hello,
who you won't recognize, but I do because I deal with the names of people. Lorna booked a private corporate booking with us back in 2020.
Oh,
nice and I didn't have an address for her, so I went back through my email list and I found the address that we delivered wine to, where she lives in Chichester back in 2020, and I just took a punt on it and sent it. She's got it and she's here. So
what if you didn't live there?
That is a win. That is an absolute win. Went round the houses, but yes, we got some new faces,
awesome.
Maybe slightly less indoctrinated faces. So we're going to go through the how to taste wine process step by step. If you haven't done it before, then mute us. You know the crack. Go make a brew or something like that. Though actually, you probably don't need any more tannin in your life, so don't make yourself a cup of tea because the next 2 hours is going to be a tannin-y boy. Grab your glasses, shake your asses. Let's have a little crack at this one. Firstly, we want to use our eyes. First, you want to use our ears. So if you head to Barry's Instagram, because
do I have to share it on mine?
Because I didn't.
Have you not shared it at all?
I can't. I don't have the app. I don't have the app. I've made certain life.
All this work that
I've made certain life choices. Okay, one of which is to remove all social media apps from my phone. One of which is for sleep hygiene, to sleep with my phone outside of my room. And I've got to be honest with you, I've never been happier. Barry, never been happier, mate.
I need to play Geometry Dash before I go to sleep. Otherwise, it's
what you do is you want to listen to Andrew Huberman, who tells you that you want to run staring directly at the sun as fast as you can for 6 hours every morning before you go to work, and that's how you get a dopaminergic spike, right? A spinacop coming up your leg is the best way, right? Anyway, but yeah, so I haven't been able to post it. But first, just something you want to use is probably your
I'm never making one again.
Use your ears by getting onto Barry's at Dutch Baz, Dutch_Baz.
I'll quickly put it on.
Is it at Dutch Baz?
Yes, it is.
At Dutch Baz on Instagram. Head there, look at his stories, and you'll find his playlist that he's made especially for this tasting. So set the scene, have that on in the background. Then we want to start using our eyes. The way to do that is you hold your glass up and stare directly at the brightest light that you can, like ideally the sun in a Huberman style. No, you want to tilt your glass about 45 degrees and hold it over a light surface. The reason being, if you hold it up to a light, all you'll see is the light, and you want to see a little bit more than that. You want to see what's in the fucking glass. So take your glass, tilt it about 45 degrees, and we're looking to spread the wine out. Essentially, by spreading the wine out, we'll get to see that much more. Malbec can be quite a dark wine because it has very, very thick skins, a lot of maceration on those skins, which gives us a lot of tannin. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a very powerful wine. Sometimes it can be very elegant. At Dutch Baz.
No. Grape to grain, mate. It's on your stories.
Have you still got grape to grain?
Yeah.
Can you do like some stuff for us just day to day, please? Tilt it about 45 degrees, spread it out so that it's basically, it's not just this really heavy inky wine and you're able to see through it. Hold it over a light surface and look through it. We're looking for 4 or 5 key things: the depth, the intensity of color, the gradients from the center to the edge. We're looking for any halo around the edge of discoloration. Red wines lose color over time. So if it's an old wine, we might be expecting it to have a little halo of burnt brick sort of color around the edge. If that's not the case, chances are that wine is quite young. If there's a water white, a completely clear halo around the edge, then that is a very, very youthful wine. And then we're looking for the legs. The legs are, people have misconceptions about the legs. They think they're a sign of quality. It's not a sign of quality. What it is, in fact, is a sign of ABV, so alcohol by volume, and residual sugar content. There can be some winemaking techniques that can play a role and can make that wine thicker and stickier, right? And that'll make it stick to the glass, but the legs are not a sign of a good wine or a poor wine. Just take it from that 45-degree angle, bring it back up to the perpendicular, and then look through my brew, and you can see the little rivulets that form and descend back into the glass. The longer they take to form and the thicker they are, the heavier and the slower the legs are. Therefore, it's starting to tell the story of the wine. Now, when it comes to the next stage is nose in the wine. And this is where the real action happens, Baz, isn't it? So talk us through how you would, as a wine professionally, nose that wine.
So you can stick your nose in, just hover it above. Don't get in too deep. Sometimes it can be a little bit aggressive, particularly if the wines are a higher ABV. Just hover above, you're going to smell things, right? Those are the most obvious aromas. We call them the primary aromas. But to really get the whole holistic,
the melon
bouquet, you need to move the wine around, agitate it ever so slightly. And what you need to do is you need to move the base of the wine glass ever so slightly. So we're looking for this whirlpool effect. If you do struggle doing it like this, like a professional, do it like what Tom does, and then we're looking for that whirlpool effect.
I've got to be honest with you, this little motion right here, this doesn't give me a date. I don't know what will.
It's nice, isn't it?
It's pretty
nice.
good.
I like to do it like this. Makes you look real sophisticated. What happens inside of the glass, the more delicate secondary and tertiary aromas that are hidden underneath those really obvious primary aromas, they will start to release themselves from the body of the wine.
It's a crucial thing to do, isn't it? Because otherwise the most obvious things are going to dominate. And like with Malbec, it can be quite a potent wine. Therefore, we are expecting perhaps that we're going to need to do that, because underneath that, powerful black currant, blackberry
layers.
There are lots and lots of layers, which it can then get really quite elegant.
And what you need to do is you need to use your vocabulary to describe what you can smell. That can sometimes be tricky. There are certain things that we've all smelled before. Those are the ones that, everybody will recognize, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard to put it into words. It's familiar. That's why we always discuss it. Use your vocabulary to describe what you can smell.
Use your grown-up words.
And usually your first instincts are the right ones. So we've had a tasting many moons ago when someone was quite a novice at tasting wines. He was only just turned 18 and he'd never really done a young Harrison.
Back in those days.
And he smelled the wine. He's like, it smells like a freshly opened tube tennis balls. We were like, what, are you okay, mate? And literally the whole comment section was agreeing, and loads of tennis ball emojis. And because people, oh my God, I know what that smells like. And they started looking for it, and chances are you're going to find it.
It's funny. It's never seen a tennis ball, obviously. I mean, none of these wines have ever seen a vanilla pod in their lives, but vanilla can be a very potent tasting note, especially within red wine, or not just red wine, but especially within wine that has seen oak, because American oak in particular has something called vanillins. Vanillins mimic the flavor of vanilla. That's why they got the name of a vanillin. It's never seen a vanilla pod, but the beauty and the mystery and the magic of how the brain works is it will pick up these little things and go, hey, that's quite a similar sort of molecule to that one that I've come across before. The olfactory system goes, right, okay, that's definitely that. And it will be telling you that aroma. It's never seen it before in its life. Hasn't had any vanilla pods sat in there, just like it won't have had any black currants or black berries and squashed up in there. No juice has gone into this other than the juice of a grape. But because of the magic of wine, the magic of flavor, the magic of aroma, these things can reveal themselves to you. So there's no such thing as a wrong answer. It's all very, very personal, very idiosyncratic. What you have experienced will massively flavor or I was going to say taint, but taint obviously has a negative connotation. We flavor what it is that you are picking up. So if one of you guys at home, and use the chat function on Zoom, use the comment section on YouTube, let us know, because you're also letting everybody else know. And the minute you say, oh, it smells quite a lot like this blackcurrant jam that I used to make when it was blah, 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 or green gauge, or I don't know, something, right?
Green gauge.
I don't know.
What is that?
Fucking the minute you say that, somebody else then goes, that's exactly the one that's what I was trying to describe. Oh, okay, that makes loads of sense now. And you've triggered in them a little sort of memory response, and their brain has gone, that's what I was trying to put together there. Okay, that's fine. Like recognizing somebody's face, but you don't know where you've seen them from. The minute somebody says, oh, he was from that thing. And, oh, fuck yeah, I saw him in that movie. Right, okay, there you go. So by communicating to the rest of us, it opens up this huge world of wine that maybe people were struggling to put into words. So do not fear. Spread the love. Use the commenting function on
the
YouTube.
more you practice it, the better you get at it as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, don't fret. No wrong answers. We're in a safe space.
There are fucking stupid answers, as we say every single time. And if any of you comment that this smells like wine, that's it. You're done. You are done.
So the meeting room uitgebonjourd. Hoppakee.
Was that German?
Hey, rustig.
It's not. So that's how to nose wine. Small circle, swirl it, hold it into your nose, breathe evenly and normally take it away and bring it back again. You smell different things every single time that you do that. Don't just hold it underneath there. You'll stop smelling anything new very quick because your brain fixates on it and goes, right, okay, that's fine. Plus also remember, we need to do the little swirly, swirl, and then bring it back again. Use the comment function. Tell us what it is that you're tasting because you will trigger in other people, perhaps little memories that they've been struggling to put into words. We then move on to the tasting element of the wine.
Hey, I'm good at that.
Hey, thanks very much. Bye. I feel like if this wasn't 5 Malbecs, you might have just downed that actually.
Yeah, it's 5 Malbecs. I've also got a little spittoon because I need to be careful how much I intake.
Because you are a responsible person.
I've got a weekend ahead with my children, so I don't want to be
also,
dying.
And also, most pertinently, this studio is no longer at the shop, so you can't get a taxi home. It won't cost you 30 quid.
I can't get a taxi.
Still cost.
Well, I'm not going to.
So, tasting the wine is where the real actions happen when you're nosing the wine, but when you're tasting the wine, that's where everything really comes together. It's the crescendo. It's the real pièce de la résistance. And there is a technique on how to do it properly. Take a small amount into your mouth, hold it there, let your body temperature do the job of warming that wine up. It will elevate to a body temp. Once you've done that, you want to then tilt your head forward ever so slightly, make a little sort of invisible straw, suck through that invisible straw, aerate the wine, spread it around the inside of your mouth. It wants to sound like this. If at some point you inhale that wine and cough it all over your compadres, or all over your computer screen, or all over yourself, then that's fine. That happens every single tasting. And if you don't think that it does, then you are a crazy person. So suck through the invisible straw, it'll aerate the wine, spread it across the inside of your mouth, and you'll pick up that much more flavor. It is incredible how much more you do pick up than if you just womp it down. Don't get me wrong, wine is for womping. You'll never hear us say anything otherwise, but some wine is also for invisible strawing. Now, when it comes to the actual tasting, there are 3 stages, aren't there, Buzz?
The approach is the first thing you're going to be experiencing, which is always going to be acidity. Without that acid backbone, the wine would be classed as flabby and out of balance. So acid is the first thing you're going to be experiencing, quickly followed by residual sugar, if there is any. Then the mid palate is where all the fruit components take center stage. So everything that your nose has already smelled, done all the heavy lifting, you're going to be tasting those with your palate, and that's what we class as the mid palate. And then the finish is, how does the wine act after you swallow it? Does it linger for a long time? Does it change into anything else? A long finish isn't always quality, because we've all been there. We've been to on a Monday, we've had a bad day, we go to Bargain Booze. We have the finest bottle of Barré-Foot. And
yes, Chateau de Barré-Foot.
Chateau de Barré-Foot, very good. White Zinfandel, it's called. And then when you drink it, you can taste it for the whole week, and that's definitely not a good thing. However, some of the finest wines that I've tasted, they've got a really lengthy finish.
There's no doubt about it. Some of the best wines have that long, lengthy finish, but it is not designed to have one. We have recently tasted one of Barry's wines called the Zaro Chacoli Primo. No, it's finished.
Some palate cleanser, that.
We'll have that after wine number 2.
Okay, fine.
Because we've got another 3 wines to go. Chacoli Primo, using Honda Zuri and a bunch of other grapes from the Basque Country. That, alongside like Vinho Verde or Albert, they're not designed to have long, lengthy finishes. They're supposed to refresh, energize, and then you then move on to another sip of that same wine. And that's
maybe a pincho.
Delicious. And that is a great way to enjoy a wine. But some of the most memorable, some of the most spectacular wines that you will try will have that long, lengthy finish. So there we go.
That's how you taste wine, by the way, ladies and gents. Shall we get cracking?
Let's have a fucking go. Right, okay. So wine number 1. Clos la Cutale Cahors Malbec. This is technically, it's not a straight Malbec, this. It's 80% Malbec, 20% Merlot. It's from the Cahors region, which is just to the south and east of the wider Bordeaux region. It is the reason why Malbec is considered to be one of the premier grape varietals within Bordeaux. Otherwise, you'd say, well, it's Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, bit of Cab Franc. Malbec creeps in there because it's got such a strong history, only about 50 or 60 miles away to the southeast of Bordeaux in the Cahors region, where they almost grow exclusively Malbec. It started its life there. It certainly continued in a different area, because the French Malbecs are not like Malbecs from other parts of the world, because this little plot in the southwestern part of France does not have massive extremes of temperature. It doesn't have massive extremes of altitude. It doesn't have huge diurnal shift, so difference between the heat of the day and the cool of the night. It's quite it's quite neutral. It's quite almost like if you the weather in that part of the world is quite forgettable. It's warm enough that you can grow big red grape varietals, but it certainly doesn't. When we're not talking California, we're not talking South Australia, we're not talking. It's quite not new. I guess neutral, and so it produces wines that aren't very obvious and can be quite restrained.
Well, Malbec was all over France. It had, I think, over 1,000 different synonyms. Looking back at the DNA now, it was actually the Malbec grape. They called it Azerwa, they called it Côte, they called it all sorts of different names. Per region, they gave it a regional name, if that makes sense. And it was just problematic. It was prone to disease. It was too wet. It was too cold. It never fully ripened. So the only really sort of pocket where it's now nestled in France is near Bordeaux, where it's arguably some of the warmest parts in France, so that the grapes can actually get up to phenolic ripeness. Otherwise, it's just a bit wishy-washy.
So they don't necessarily grow a lot of Malbec close to the coast, right? It's inland in Cahors. I mean, it's not a million miles away from the coast, but it's definitely not coastal in the way that thick vineyards on the left bank and right bank of the Gironde.
No, exactly.
It's a little bit further inland, therefore a little bit warmer, and that's why Malbec is allowed and able to develop to full phenolic ripeness. I was going to say, is Malbec quite fussy? Because we think about, like, Chardonnay will grow on the side of the fucking motorway. Pinot Noir is allergic to tap water. It won't grow anywhere unless it's absolutely perfect. Malbec, if it grows everywhere, or if it was growing everywhere, then that would suggest that it would grow everywhere, but it wasn't achieving the it wasn't excelling anywhere apart from Cahors, and that's why it's shrunk down to that little area.
Exactly. Well, it doesn't like wet, and it doesn't like cold too much, so it needs to be nice and warm and ideally dry. So hence why Argentina is pretty perfect for it. And we see in other pockets of the world now popping up as well. You know, I've seen some. There wasn't a Malbec from New Zealand that we did as well.
We did for a long time. It was fairly unremarkable from memory, but it was like it was cheap.
And had a good label.
and it was also a Malbec from New Zealand, which is something to go like, hey, that's quite interesting. But they also did an Albarino, which was also fairly underwhelming as well. Left field, is that what it was?
Yeah, that's right.
It was using great varietals they didn't necessarily classically go for in New Zealand, but
you see some in Australia now is doing quite well. South Australia, obviously nice and warm, quite dry as well. Yeah. So it thrives there. But really, its spiritual home now is obviously Argentina, and particularly the Mendoza region.
So let's have a little crack at this one. This is the Clos La Coutal Malbec from Cahors. It's the 2020 vintage from memory. It's the 2020 vintage, and this is sat on our shelves. 2020 is, I mean, let's face it, is young, so we are expecting this to be quite not an abrasive wine. We're expecting this to be a young French wine, and we kind of know what that is kind of about.
Yep,
but perhaps
looks like Malbec, that's for sure.
Do you want to go ahead and break it down whilst I'm looking at the price? Do
you know how you can tell when a wine
21 and a half quid, which for a French wine is fucking buttons, mate.
It's particularly purple, always Malbec. It's got it's a thick-skinned grape variety. We know that all the color in wine comes from the skin of the grape. So the thicker the skin, usually the more color it will extract, and also the more tannins you'll get in the wine. So we're going to expect this, like I say, it's young, it's French, it's going to be quite peaked acidity. It's going to be quite prominent tannins as well.
So we're going to expect over time the tannins will fall away, and so will the acidity. But the acidity should leave this as quite a juicy, fruit-forward wine, perhaps in its early years.
You can tell it's young, so it's nice and bright, ruby / purple.
The purple is quite prominent actually, and it does have a sort of a nice shine to it.
It's not very deep in color in the deepest part of the pool. You said there's 20% of Merlot in the blend in this one.
Yeah, and the Merlot is often used in Bordeaux blends as a way to add in color. So is that?
Are you sure?
That's what I've heard previously. Merlot, you put in a touch of Merlot because it adds in this really dark, inky color.
Have a little look at the legs. They are relatively slow, but they're definitely not stained. On the nose. You know, it's not very primary fruity.
No, it's not. I'll tell you what it is. It's quite herbaceous. It's got a lot
bit
of
an herbal now.
and if I'm getting anything, I'm getting like green flavors, like almost like a capsicum.
There's going to be thread throughout these wines because I've had a little nose of wine number 5, and it's for me the first thing I said is like quite green. For me, it's quite spicy. It's got like it's got a woody aroma to it.
Well, I'm gonna back you there and say that the green combined with that spiciness is giving me a sort of like a non-pickled jalapeno sort of vibe.
If
There's a bit of wood,
definitely spiciness. If I was to pick out some fruit, I would say like a plum, and that's because that's programmed in my brain. If I know I'm tasting Malbec, I'm looking for that plum. Because plum is always something that you find in.
See, I don't know what fucking plum tastes like apart from like umeshu.
You know, like
plums
like a nectarine. If you think of a stone fruit, okay, fruit.
Fruit. But a dark stone fruit as opposed to like an apricot or a peach.
It's a bit creamy as well. I got like a bit of a smokiness. Yeah, it's definitely complex on the nose for sure. Smells quite.
That's classic French though, because it doesn't have real extremes, as we said, of altitude or of temperature. The complexity comes from the fact that the terroir is not dragging it too far in any one direction, which means that it sits in that pocket as a balanced wine, and balanced wine always is that much more complex because nothing dominates and overawes all the other flavors. If you have something that pulls out, so for example, a Southern Italian Susamaniello or Primitivo or a Nero di Troia is going to be so ripe and intense that it's almost going to overpower any of the other notes that might be coming out from the winemaking or from the terroir.
Absolutely.
Right? Because of where it is in France, it's warm enough to allow Malbec to ripen, but it's not so hot that it's going to be like, this is fucking
stewed,
ripe fruit, stewed, jammy, blah. And that's classic French. I'd be really interested if you guys are of a mind to, and if you want to just fucking smash your wines, we're totally down with that. We support you in your life choices, but try and save a little bit of this because this is OG Malbec.
No.
This is OG Malbec. Let's see how it compares to the other ones as we move throughout. This is called earthy and wood floor of dead pine leaves.
I got a little bit of meatiness as well, like biltong.
A little Duffy spanakopie.
To try.
Cheers. Salut. Those tannins are
prominent.
Wow. They're really quite.
Particularly, it's quite mouth puckering, isn't it? Food wine.
Yeah.
That's what I always say when someone's got peak tannins, for me, the food will sort of like relieve that tannin.
It's funny because the balance and therefore complexity of the nose is a real strong. On first sip, this is my first sip of red wine. And so that elevated tannin is quite abrasive. It's a barrier to really getting further into that wine for me. So I'm going to let my mouth just deal with the aggression and then come back to it. You're a bit more of a jaded old wine freak.
I like a little bit of tannin structure in my wine. It's interesting. Whilst it's been in your mouth, now go back to the nose, and now it just smells of new oak or of like expensive wood. Pencil lead I get now as well, a bit of that graphite sort of smell. There's like crushed rock.
Push past that, and with all those extra things, that's really interesting. I push past that, and I get more of the fruit.
Yeah, I've been interested. 21 quid
for a £20 wine. I don't know.
It's got lots of aging potential as well.
That's
all those sort of like aggressive quote unquote esters. They sort of like integrate.
Get this for 20 quid and leave it for 4 or 5 years. It's going to be a very, very different wine. But I do think that perhaps that combination with food is where it's really going to shine. What do you guys think at home? Liz and Paul, much more fruit forward tasting than it smells.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely more fruit on the palate than there is on the nose. With the nose, I kind of struggled. You know, it's like a little bit of sort of like a dark fruit compound there, but for me, it's more about the sort of secondary and tertiary aroma profiles, particularly that woodiness, and that really sort of like shines on the palate as well. It's one of the eldest wines in Europe.
Tell us some more about it then.
So established in Quercy by the Romans, like most European vineyards, they all got planted by the Romans on their conquest of the whole of Europe. They developed the production of the wine, and in the year 92 AD, Emperor Domitian. Have you got any nice little facts about him? Was he real mean and all that?
I mean, he was a Roman emperor, so he was probably a bit of a prick.
Well, he was, because what he said, because this wine was quite popular, he asked them to tear out half of the vineyard so that, you know, give Italy's wine a little bit of a chance, because this wine was sort of dominating, and everybody disobeyed him in Cahors, so they just kept on going with it.
That is quite, because what we were talking about on the International Women's Day about Eleanor of Aquitaine, which I know you will come up later in your story.
Well, next actually,
that whole thing about the Bordelais and the Gascons, I guess, would be the Gasconians.
No, I was going to say that.
The Gascons, they're quite sort of separatist in their mindset. They don't particularly see themselves falling in with the rest of France, and so they certainly wouldn't see themselves falling in with some fucking Italiano going, turn out to the Malbec.
Get it in.
Yeah, I keep my Malbec.
Well, it's a nice little segue, because in the Middle Ages, there's exact Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was married to the future King of England, Henry II.
Correct.
I did a lot of research.
And Gascony was part of her dowry, which recognized as one of the most incredible dowries ever given. People at home.
Gascony, though.
Gascony. It was given. It was. But Gascony had a deep water port, and it produced the type of wines that the English liked. Whether it was chicken or egg, they liked them before. All of a sudden, it was then massively exported with no taxation, all the rest of it into England. Maybe chances are it happened afterwards, once it got fucking cheap, which is a very English way to approach how you drink. It's good. But that's if it was cheaper, I'd probably like it more.
Well, that's exactly what happened, because when she fell in love with this wine and opened the doors to London, and particularly England, to this black wine of Cahors, production went up and up and up, because you English like a little drink, don't you? Hey, Cahors wine experienced considerable growth. That's what happened, and it was consumed by the pilgrims as well on the way to Santiago de Compostela in North Spain. Which developed a massive reputation. And then in 1325, it even became the table wine of the Pope.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because there was at the time, there was a lot of conflict, because the Pope is in Italy, in the Vatican City in Rome, right? But Italy at the time was a bunch of city-states. There was the Milanese, there was the Florentines. There were all these individual city-states weren't actually weren't unified at all, and therefore weren't powerful. The biggest and most powerful Catholic country was
the Vatican.
No, was France.
Oh, right.
And so France bankrolled basically the Catholic Church to a greater or lesser extent. Hence why, when there was a schism in the Catholic Church, Catholic Church, which means like a sort of a splitting.
Okay, like chasm.
Kind of. There was at one point there were two popes, one of which was based in the Vatican City, and the other one was based in Avignon.
And they Chateauneuf du Pape,
which means the new home of the Pope, because they existed at the same time.
So he drank Malbec then.
So, but that's fascinating. So it wasn't drinking Italian wines; they were drinking French wines, because the French were like, "Hey, dickhead." Drink our fucking wines. We send so much money to you fuckers. Start drinking our wines. And then even when he then moved to Avignon in the Rhone, it was still like, no, Malbec. Drink that. That's what you drink. And the Pope's like, oh, okay.
I found that a really interesting fact. It became a bit problematic. The 100-year war came to play in 1337, and there was a mandate as well that promoted wines of the Gironde over any other wines, and they put massive taxes on anything else. So Cahors became expensive. It still maintained its reputation, however, but by returning to the court of the French King Francis I. But you know, it took a little bit of a hit because of that sort of like extra taxation. It mainly got exported, particularly to England. Russia as well was a big market for it, and the Dutch. We like a little
well,
bit
the Lekker Dutchies were like super traders, man. You guys were. It's funny. I think Hitler described the English as a nation of shopkeepers, as like a derogatory way because we weren't sort of great thinkers or great this or great that. You know, you're just fucking bunch of merchants because we basically made an empire on the back of exploiting India and trading with the world. But we'd done that in the model of the VOC because the Dutch were also
very good
unbelievable traders, and not just going eastwards to the Indies, but also going west to the Americas and all the rest of it. You guys,
Tasmania, we discovered
the whole fucking kit. I've been reading a lot about it. The Dutch were crazy traders. At one point, they sent something like 25 times the men and brought back 25 times the trade goods from India across a century than all of the other European powers combined. The VOC, the
Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie,
the VOC,
yes,
25 times more than the rest of the European powers. And the French had the Compagnie des Indes, the English had the East India Company.
So Playmobil version of
fucking bullshit. The Dutchies were like, haha, watch this. And you know, we were ruthless, horrible colonial fucks, yes. But God damn it, we made a profit. We knew how to turn a profit.
That's for sure.
Dutchies.
There was, as in most of Europe, obviously disaster struck around 1877. You know, what happened? Phylloxera, exactly, which was a type of locust came over from the ships in America. It nestled inside of the vine and laid its larvae, and then ate the vine from inside out, which meant that it all had to be pulled out and had to be grafted, which happened somewhat 70 years later because they didn't know what to do. It was like, well, the vines are dying here in Europe. We can't make any more wine. This is an absolute disaster.
The thing that I didn't know until we did more research on it is that phylloxera was like it was the slow illness that kills.
Yeah,
it
exactly.
Wasn't like the locust comes around and goes, ow, and the vine's dead.
No.
And they buy it, and the vine just produces less and less and less and less and less and less, and then it dies. And that's why when Bordeaux, it was a contraction over the course of a fucking decade to the point where it was then producing zero, and they had to go, oh fuck,
right? Go to Yumi.
At which point the Spaniards, who were especially in Rioja where they had more altitudes, and it wasn't as affected by phylloxera initially. Eventually, it all was, but that's why Rioja then gained like a status, because there was a contraction of everyone's favorite wines. The English drank claret, which is Bordeaux wines like this, and that contracted to the point where they're like, well, we want a big, heavy, intense wine. That's what we like to drink. And the Riojans were like, hello, we are totally fine. We can make lots of the wines. Please buy them, please. And the Dutch then took it.
Yeah, of course we did.
Sold it.
Yeah, it wasn't until 70 years later, in 1947, that some vignerons put their heads together and created a cellar in Pargnac and revived Cot, which was the grape variety that they called the black wine of Cahors. And with grafts from Bordeaux, the growers then replanted it, but then frost hit in the big freeze in 1956 and destroyed 99% of those plantings, meaning that it was only
destroyed them.
Yeah, it was only
killed the vines.
Literally in the Cahors appellation, there's only 4,500 hectares of Malbec left.
Wow,
that's it.
Wow,
it doesn't grow anywhere else. There's only 1% left in Bordeaux as well.
See, this is interesting, and because it went across to the New World, which we'll move on to now. Wine number 2, the Montes Alfa Colchagua Valley Malbec from Chile, because it made that shift across there and really sort of hit its stride. Unless you've got anything else you want to drop on.
Well,
because it really hit its stride. The French, I guess, have then been like, "Hey, bro, we've got Syrah. We've got Cabernet, we've got Merlot. I mean, do we need Malbec? Or these guys over here are making the Malbec that everyone wants. We can't do that because we can't grow at 1,500 meters, 2,000 meters above sea level, which is what everyone's shouting about with Mendovan Malbecs. There's not that market for it, so they're just not investing in it anymore. And Malbec is therefore shrinking as a French commodity.
Well, the French have got a big role to play in where it is growing now, because it was a French agronomist, new word for me today, I've learned, Michel Pouget, him and his team of French vignerons and enologists took clippings of the Malbec vine over to Chile to start with. And it was then a very important person that allowed Malbec in Argentina, which was the governor, Domingo Sarmiento. He
the pronunciation buzz today is absolutely on fire, mate. You're absolutely killing it, mate.
These cuttings that they brought over, they gave seed to the story of Chilean and Argentinian Malbec, and the story continues from here, because Malbec it went up to there, but it then lost its popularity again and got pulled out, replanted with other international varieties. But now, obviously, 1995 was a big year when production went up, and is now one of the most planted varieties out there in South America.
Well, let's move our tasting on to South America. Before we do move on, the Clos La Coutal is quite an iconic winery itself, though, right?
Yeah, so all this research that I've done is for nothing. Yeah, 100 hectares of Malbec vines they had, or they have, which are located in the heart of the meanders of the lot on alluvial soils composed of gravel, clay, limestone, and tended by 6 generations of vignerons. So yeah, it is one of the oldest wineries in Cahors. Got a little bit about the winemaking as well. Each plot is vinified separately. And then the vine ages an average of 25 years as well. Careful pruning, which leads to low yield. So they actually cut off healthy bunches for the energy of the vine to sort of like focus on certain bunches rather than having 10 bunches on the vine. Cutting half of that off concentrates the energies and the flavors and the aromas into smaller bunches, which means you get more flavor in those bunches. It's traditionally destemmed, which is required for wines to keep, which I never knew. So if when the bunches, they take everything off the actual stem of the bunch, if that makes sense. Because if you have that in there, apparently, according to these guys, it's not good for keeping wine. And like we just established, this wine is relatively young. It's got incredible age potential. Very young. It's very young. There's
no doubt about it. This is a very, very young expression.
Keep on for 10 years and let me know in 10 years. Yeah, see what it's like.
but it's so like the whole bunch pressing or carbonic maceration style of
leaving everything in the leaves
is just a way, is not a good way to make a wine that has aging potential.
Makes sense now, doesn't it?
Kind of, yeah. You're adding in free radicals. You're adding in something which could potentially could make something amazing, but also could absolutely fuck it right up.
So yeah, it doesn't age very well if you're leaving the stems on. So hence it's been fully destemmed, which is traditional for this particular wine. Fermentation is then conducted at relatively high temperatures, and the higher the temperature, the more it stews, the more color you're going to extract, the more aroma, the more phenolics, all those kind of things. Blending then happens in January, so from all these different plots that they've separately vinified, and then blend them together to the final cuvee, and then it's vatted into wood for many months. It doesn't tell me how many, it just says many. So where the tannins will...
It says Asian oak on the back of the bottle for 8 to 10 months.
Asian oak?
Aged.
Oh, right, okay.
Not Asian. Aged in oak for 8 to 10 months.
It's going to be French oak because it's French.
Yeah,
it's going to be
like, how dare you even suggest using American oak?
Great start, man. I can't wait to see what the rest is going to bring.
Yeah, exactly. Love to know what you guys think of that. Young, tannins quite abrasive, but aging potential and a good investment because it's cheap, which means that stick a bottle of that in a cellar somewhere with a constant temperature, and then come back and see what it looks like later. And one thing which you can't deny is the pedigree of Clos La Coutal.
Absolutely, yeah, it's an iconic wine. Very, very rich history. Yeah, it definitely needs a little bit of age. It
100% does, but that is a very, very classic and expressive version of French Malbec. So let's move on to South American.
Will be really, like Tom said before, if you have the self-control and leave a little bit of the wine, it will be interesting to compare all the Malbecs from the different countries, and particularly from the 3 different regions that we've got over here, because they're going to be so different to the one from
exactly.
Just tried.
Yeah, if you French Malbec is not South American Malbec, and vice versa, it is not the same. So this is the Montes Alpha. Montes has got quite a few different sort of subcategories within it. They're based in Chile. Colchagua, Casablanca Valley sort of regions. They've got a few different subcategories. There's the outer limits version, which is usually Sanso and Pais.
Well, it's the outer limits is that. So how it works with Montes is they're sort of like the pioneers of finer wines in Chile, because back in the day it was all table wine and it was all Pais commune wine. It was
not even just back in the day. Even now, Chile is sort of is the bastard ginger stepchild of South American wine production, whereas Argentina, and actually it's funny, there's a comedian called Tom Segura, and he was talking about the sort of the hierarchy within South America, like social hierarchy in terms of the countries, right? So like I was talking about, it was like in Asia there's China and Japan, and there's and you progress down, and then you end up in sort of how they see the rest of the people from that area. And in South America, apparently Argentina is at number one with a fucking bullet. Brazil is very, very close, but only because it's massive. But then you start getting in, and it's basically as you progress further north, they start to become a little bit sort of supercilious about people from that area. But Argentina is the top of the tree because it's wealthy, it's big.
What about Chile? Is the
no, Chile's close to it, quite close to it. But Chilean wines is, even right now, is definitely considered as the poorer version of Argentina.
Aurelio Montes changed all that. He had a vision. It started off as a retirement sort of like hobby kind of thing, sort of like a retirement fund. Started making some wine.
Making some wines. Now it's a fucking powerhouse.
Well, he started making 3,000 cases of 12. Very boutique, very small. But he really quickly became recognized as like a top enologist, someone who really knew what he was doing. Plus, also, as someone who works in the vineyards, he's not the type of guy who will sit in a lab with a white coat on. He was the guy that also went to go out and sell his wine. He was also a salesperson. So he was very, very crafty. And yeah, he literally, as a 20-year-old, he went to the Apalta Valley, which is in Colchagua, and fell in love with the sort of like meandering little hills, and these hillsides would be perfect for grape growth. And when he then had some money to invest, that's literally where he started building his estate. And now it's he lived recently in 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award in viticulture.
And cross countries as well, because he also owns,
that's right,
Kaiken, one of our most popular Argentinian wines in the shops.
But it's always pushing the boundaries. I like that.
Like Kaiken, Montes has got different levels. So there is the classic Montes series, which are really quite
entry level,
12 to 15 pound a bottle, buy a case for 60 quid, and and it's really affordable stuff. The next step up is probably this Alpha gear. Because now with the Alpha it starts to be single valley. So this is the Colchagua Valley, and then they've got a Casablanca Valley Chardonnay and other stuff like that. And then you've got the outer limits, which is like Sanso and Pais, so like more like
and that's literally going to place where no viticulture happens. It's like the outer limits, as in stuff should be growing.
That's where it goes to be.
That's
those kind of places.
And
then they've got the top of the tree, which is like the Purple Angel kind of gear. But
I've written that down because there's 4 iconic wines that they make. So yeah, you're right. It's the Purple Angel, it's the Folly, and what are the other 2? Alpha M and the Titer. I've only tasted the Folly and the Purple Angel, and the Purple Angel is a Carmenere. And yeah, that literally comes from those estate planted vines of that Apalta Valley. Yeah,
there you go. So they run the gamut. That's 100% down to Aurelio Montes and his vision to produce a lovely balance between affordable wines and idiosyncratic expressions, pushing the boundaries, and then making some really top end gear. What you can usually guarantee with a Montes wine is it's going to be affordable, approachable, and good quality, good value for money, and something that you can sort of hang your hat on. It might not be, this is like maybe 22, 24 pound a bottle. It might not be something that you're going to tell everybody about, but you're certainly never going to be scared to open a bottle and serve it.
The Purple Angel.
The Purple Angel. It's also fucking £90 a bottle or something like that, isn't it? So let's have a little crack at this one. The Montes Alpha Colchagua Valley Malbec. Now,
Much deeper.
much deeper and richer in color.
Inky.
Really quite potent.
Barry
now.
thumb test. Nearly gone.
Nearly gone.
Also super aromatic.
And the other thing as well, yeah.
It literally
Holy shit! I just got that.
fills
Now,
the room.
as I'm moving it around there, this is a stainer. This is a
Mm.
real stainer. So much. I mean, the thick skins. One of the things we'll talk about momentarily is about the hole in the ozone layer and why Malbec, which is already thick skinned, got even thicker skinned. But that is immediately visible because it is staining that that glass, and it's not like this. This is again a 2020 vintage, the same as the Clos La Coutal, but so much more stained. Same grape, same year, different country, different altitude. Though, granted, the truth of the matter is that the altitude of this valley is not huge. I mean, we're talking like 300-400 meters.
Proximity to the ocean with Chile.
Yeah. But 300-400 meters above sea level, as opposed to at sea level, as opposed to 2,000 meters and 3,000 meters.
I think we go 1, 2, 3,000, I think, which is quite nice. But yeah, much more color to it. So like you said, you know, it's got more sunshine hours, also that hole in the ozone layer, which gives more aggressive UV rays. The grape will have to protect itself, and it does that itself.
Yeah, I mean,
genetically modifies itself in essence, and then forms a thicker skin on the
it was already thick-skinned. That's why Malbec could survive when it went across to South America, where the hole in the ozone layer caused UV light to absolutely batter it. If you didn't do that, there'd be raisins by the time that you were trying to harvest them. So it's kind of like it's a little bit like the analogy of the swimmer's body. Like a lot of people start swimming because they want to have the body of a swimmer. Because a swimmer's got, you know, broad shoulders, tall, lean, whatever. But actually, swimmers swim because they've got that body anyway, and then it just gets accentuated.
Right, okay.
So it's not like if you're 5'2",
I'm not going to be a champion swimmer now.
if you're 5'2", you're not going to go, well, I'll swim, you know, for 2 hours a day for 5 years, and I'll look like this 6'3" fucking massive. You're 5 foot. No, you might be in good shape, but your body shape is not going to change. The swimmer's body is something that is chicken or egg. What comes first? Do people swim because of their body, or do they get the body because they swim? Well, it's the first way around. So Malbec was able to survive in the Andes because it had that thick skin, and then with selective breeding and then through evolution, it developed thicker skins. That's why Malbec now thrives in South America, because it doubled down on what it already had, which was a thick skin, and then it got even thicker.
Malbec Ribena.
It is so really so generous on the nose.
Very blackcurranty, a little sort of like fleck of sort of like greenness to it.
A great taste in that from Liz and Paul. Smells like walking past a restaurant where they're cooking pizza with a load of oregano sprinkled on it. That kind of rich tomato, sourdough.
There's a crushed rock kind of vibe as well. So there's a little bit of that minerality. Smells great. That's taste licorice on the nose as well. Got a little hint.
Now the difference, thicker skins, but the tannins are so much softer. Now that, if the skins are thicker, how can the tannins be more softer and integrated? And is it just purely because the French are like, because it's the same vintage, so which doesn't make any difference because Chile is down here and France is up there. So the weather conditions and patterns, the vintage variation is going to be completely, you know, apples and oranges. But it's the same age. So why are the tannins that much more integrated on this wine?
It's the time that the skins are being left inside. So firstly, that fermentation temperature was up there, wasn't it? With the Clos de la Coutal, so it was at 30 degrees, which is quite high for a ferment. This one is only 12 days of fermentation. That's a month fermenting. So those skins sitting in
almost 3 times as long.
That's definitely one of the major.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the thing. A month on the skins is going to extract. It's like leaving a cup of tea in a tea bag in a cup of tea. You can leave it in there for 1 minute, or you can leave it in there for 3 minutes. The one that's in there for 3 minutes is going to be darker and heavier and more tannic. The one that's in there for 1 minute will be brighter and fresher.
Also, the amount of time it's spent in oak. This one, 12 months in oak, French oak in this case, and 33% of that is new. There's also some cold soaking happening, which extract more color. This is pre-fermentation, and then post-fermentation, there's another maceration on the skin to develop structure and color. So it's all got to do with the winemaking, but also from where it comes from. Very, very, very interesting. Very, very different wine. Crazy to think that that's the same grape variety, right? So
same grape in the same year. And again, like you can't compare the 2020 vintage in Colchagua Valley to the 2020 vintage in Cahors, because they're different countries, different continents, separated by 8,000 miles.
Got a little bit of vanilla, got a little bit of licorice vibe, got a little bit of yogurt, like cherry yogurt kind of vibe.
I'll definitely go along with that.
Really nice acidity to it. Nice tannins. This is like really well put together, and I don't expect anything less from a producer like Montes. All the wines that I've tried from them, it's always great quality. You just when you see, even they make a range which you can't get hold of through your distributor you buy Montes from, but they do a range in some of the supermarkets. I've seen a Chardonnay in Tesco, for instance, and I sometimes buy it. It's like £9, which is not the cheapest in Tesco, but it's just know, it's a Montes one, it's going to be good. It's going to, or at least it's going to be nice. It's not going to be. You
can, again, as we said, you can hang your hat on it. It might not be the wine. If you take this wine, Purple Angel is a different story. If you take this wine to a dinner party, it might not be the best wine, but it will be a wine that everybody around the table will like. It's very, very hard not to enjoy that wine. It's got a really lovely, long, lingering finish. Got beautiful sort of
fresh
cherry and juicy vibe to it. Tell us a bit more about it, Buzz.
So, about Montes in its own right. So I've already touched on that ever so slightly, but in the late 80s is when the Chilean wine export started to get going, and Montes saw a business opportunity. So we started making boutique wines, produced 3,000 12-bottle cases each year, making high-quality wines in small quantities. So quality rather than quantity. Like I said before, it was a retirement project for Aurelio, who was the founder of the company, and something to do as well, keep him busy in his all the years. However, he started to become recognized as a very talented enologist with great commercial instinct. Like I said, he was the type that would go and sell his own wines, so would be his own representative of his wines as well, rather than getting a flashy sales rep to go and do that for him. In a matter of years, those 3,000 cases became 650,000 cases. So they had to expand someone, build a state-of-the-art winery, gravity-fed, minimal sort of like pressure on the actual grape juice, which means that you get pristine quality of actual raw material to make great wine out of.
So this is the Colchagua here, just there.
Yeah, I've not got but screen sharing.
Yeah, but halfway up, much more about the proximity to the
Pacific Ocean,
to the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely blue skies, close to the mountains, but not mountainous. That's really quite a crucial thing, isn't it?
Yes, Chile was not producing wines that the consumer wanted to drink, really. And as I wanted high quality wines, it's something that he identified and responded really quickly to. So, like I said, he fell in love with these beautiful hillsides in Alpalta, which is in Colchagua, where he first visited when he was 21 years old. And when his business partners gave him the opportunity to plant his first vines, this is the spot that he then chose. The land was purchased in 1990 and began planting on the hillsides and became the birthplace of his iconic wines such as the Purple Angel, the Folly, Alpha M, and the Titan. Nowadays, the land they tend to span of a whopping 110 hectares, 75% of which is then estate owned by themselves, 25% is in the hands of farmers, but they do all the work in it. So they've got complete control of what happens in the vineyard with regards to, irrigation, all of that, completely sustainable as well. So there's minimal irrigation as well to sort of like reduce their water footprint, all the right things you want to hear in a great operation. When it comes, like I said, this is a really big award in Viticulture, Lifetime Achievement Award. Only icons in the business.
But by definition, there can only be one person every single year.
It doesn't really get handed out every year.
And it doesn't even get handed out every year. Right, okay.
So when it comes to the winemaking, the fruit comes from their own vineyards, in this case in Alpalta and Marchigue, two of the finest sites in Colchagua, irrigated by a sustainable system, which is reducing the water footprint by 65%. Cool breeze from the Pacific and low nighttime temperatures allow for slow ripening, which means that you don't get really any extremes.
That's interesting. That's interesting, isn't it? Because it's the flash fry versus slow cooker argument, isn't it? You know, anything that happens slowly will tend to develop maybe a little bit more complexity of flavor than something which happens fast, which might develop lots of flavor very, very quickly, but it will be maybe slightly unidimensional, one-dimensional.
Gotcha.
Whereas something that happens slowly, it might not shout in any one direction loads, but it will develop huge complexity of flavors.
Yeah.
It's 14.5% ABV, which is really just actually
it's quite
but it doesn't taste like.
No, I agree. Disease pressure is low, resulting in consistent, healthy harvest. Everything is done by hand as well when it comes to the harvest.
So why is the disease pressure so low? It's not like it's protected in the same way as a lot of altitude or very, very hot areas have low disease pressure.
Breezes from the Pacific.
Gotcha.
Blows away all that sort of humidity that you might find in vineyards. Also, careful pruning by opening up the canopy will alleviate some of this disease pressure that you might get. When it comes to them, so hand harvested, so nothing's done by machinery. So think about that. Over 100 hectares, everything is hand harvested. They also want to employ as many people as they can to sort of like keep the community employed and involved with it, which I really like. You see that a lot in South America, particularly with the final producer today. Is a completely different story. That's actually Lupi. When I did the research on that, it's a great story. We'll get onto that, of course. A little bit more of the winemaking that happens in the actual winery. So the grapes, they come into the winery and then get cold soaked for 5 days. This then extracts phenolics, aroma. Those kind of things are obviously important. That's why the wine smells so incredible.
I guess one thing which is quite interesting is the phrase cold soaking. Obviously, it means that
it goes in a cryo room, like
so it's actually kept
cool.
Mm-hmm. So when you get all of that extraction, you don't then get cooking and spoiling.
Correct, because when it starts cooking, it starts going a bit funky, starts going a bit naff, keeping it at a nice chill temperature. And that's why we refrigerate fruit in the supermarket.
Cool. So you might taste more from an apple or a banana that is at room temperature, but it will go bad quicker.
Correct.
So by chilling it when this process is happening, you're getting the extraction without getting the almost unavoidable spoilage that will come along if it's happening at room temperature. It needs to be cooler, but you get all of the benefits of the extraction without any of the negatives.
Correct. Fermentation then occurs. That happens in stainless steel for 12 days. And after that, there's another period of maceration on the skin post-fermentation. Then it gets pumped into barrel while malolactic fermentation occurs. So that's the secondary bacterial fermentation, where malic acids that you find in green apples that are really harsh get transformed into lactic acids that you find in yogurt. Hence why you get that sort of lactic kind of quality on the nose. Yeah. That sort of cherry yogurt vibe that comes from that malolactic.
I'm guessing that all of these wines have undergone malolactic in some form.
85% of the red wines in the world go through malolactic fermentation.
It's very peculiar to find one that doesn't.
Then 50% of the final blend is aged in oak. So 33% of that new. So the other 50%. It's kept in steel, hence why it's still so lively, hence why those tannins are so well integrated as well. If the whole 100% of the actual must would have gone into oak barrel, you will extract more tannins from the wood, which means that, see what I mean? I think of everything. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love, and that you can really see it in the glass.
And they're trying to make a wine which has mass appeal. I mean, it's £26 a bottle.
Great bottle of wine.
Malbec 30 gets you 30% off, which then drags that down to sub 20 quid. And a good chunk below 20 quid as well.
I'm really impressed by that.
And that's
really nice.
It's drinking really fucking well, isn't it?
It doesn't really necessarily remind me of a Malbec though. It's very different.
I'll probably go along with that. Well, I think this exists and sits in that middle ground between French and Argentinian Malbec.
Really good,
but almost doesn't. It isn't that, but you get a good degree more florality starting to express itself here. Maybe that's just because the tannin isn't overpowering it.
Get that greenness, yeah. It's lovely, lively, extracted. nice and really good wine.
Good drinking wine. All right,
I
guys.
like it.
Now it's time to move on to Argentina's
Here we go.
primary export. Not its original grape, but it's probably Bernarda. But certainly Argentina's.
I need to keep on that.
Yeah, that's fine. Argentina's most renowned exports after Lionel Messi and Diego Maradona will probably be Mendoza or certainly altitude grown Malbecs. This is the Tucumán Reserve Malbec. A good word to see is always reserve, because it means that there's been a good chunk of wines held back specifically for this one. This is one of yours, one of your wines, Baz.
Correct, yeah.
We can expect a completely balanced and not biased assessment.
This
of
is the best one.
What's the altitude we're talking about here?
We're sitting here at around 1,100 meters.
1,100 meters above sea level.
Comes from two different plots, though. This is by a producer called Bodegas Bodeguer. Bodeguer. And Tucumán, actually, they used to be in the sugarcane business. So they originally came from a little village called Tucumán. And Mendoza, Mendoza.
Gotcha.
So where they used to come from and now where they started up their wine business.
So Mendoza Malbec from Argentina. Let's have a little crack at this one. The Tucumán Reserva. I'm gonna say it's as extracted as the Chilean one.
It's not as purple.
It's not. So
It's got a bit more age. Can you tell?
Yes, because it's not quite as vibrant in the glass.
It's 16, is it? Was that the Chardonnay I was working with this afternoon?
No, this says 2020.
Okay, interessant. All the same age then? Are they all?
Looking that way.
But you know, it's the wine number 2. It was so vibrantly purple. It was almost like neon in the glass.
Yeah, this is a lot more.
Definitely not staining either.
No. I don't know. Maybe a bit more than the French. Maybe not as much as the Montes.
No, you're right. When the twisted, it is a little bit stainy actually, but it's not as.
Legs are
quite quick.
Quite quick.
Medium.
I'll go with medium.
There we go. That's why this is exactly what I expect when I smell Malbec. Here's that plum. Here's that vanilla.
See, I'm not going through it straight off the bat at all.
Maybe you don't know what plum smells like.
Well, it certainly doesn't smell like fucking wood smoke, which is what I'm getting off this fucking wine.
Do you think wood smoke on this? There's a little bit of that greenness still, eh?
Just a touch,
you get it?
just a hint in the background.
A little bit of that sort of like capsicum pepper.
I'm really looking forward. I really want to get some more fruit on it.
It's because it's reserve. It's spent more time in wood, so that's going to overtake them from the primary aromas. So you get more secondary and tertiary from the time that's spent in wood. So you get a little bit more of that sort of vanilla. You get a bit of that, smokiness, smoked meat. I definitely get fruit though. Give it a good agitation. Think of like purple fruit. Think of plums and damsons. You know damsons? Have you ever? No. Okay. Damson gin you've had. Slow berries.
I guess.
So you know that's what it smells like.
I'm definitely just winding you up now.
A little, just coming back onto that French what was it again? Agronomist. Close.
Which I think is an agricultural economist. Paul, Lizzie, you're generally quite.
So Michel Pouget. He took the cuttings over to Chile first, and it was that governor Domingo Sarmiento who then allowed Malbec to start cultivating it. That was incredibly important. Now here is where we go on a little bit of a roller coaster when it comes to Argentina and Malbec's little little love relation. So Argentina's warm and sunny climate proved perfect for the variety. Like I said earlier, in France it was problematic. It wasn't warm enough. It was too wet. Malbec just didn't do very well. Hence why it's sort of eventually kind of diminished. Over here, nice and hot at altitude as well. It's absolutely perfect for the variety. So it found a new spiritual home here. So
some spectacular looking fucking shit in Mendoza, man. Jesus, what?
I want to go there. Maybe one day.
This is why you can make wine in Mendoza, because you can also sunbathe and swim in a pool right by these incredible mountains. That's why.
Which is snow
That's
right?
why you can make wine here.
So it had none of its usual problems with rot and frost. It was able to fully ripen. It was quickly spreading across most of Argentina's wine region. And in over a century, it became the most planted variety. So this was recorded in 1962. Listen to this: 60,000 hectares of Malbec was being tended to by the vignerons in Argentina. However, then during its following years, those old Malbec vines were torn out and replaced by other varietals. Hence why we find some Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, and all that kind of stuff over in Argentina. Between 1962 and 1995, 80% of the vineyards were pulled out. 80%. Oh. And by 1995, it was less than 10,000 hectares that were remaining, and it was really fastly disappearing. Now, Malbec was losing its prominence sort of varietals, like I said, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon. But some vintners kept faith in it and saw it as its sort of like native varietal, and they were making wines that actually gained great international sort of recognition.
Agronomist is an expert in the science of soil management and crop production.
There you go.
So specifically that.
So Malbec's reputation, particularly Argentinian Malbec's reputation, started growing in other parts of the world abroad. So the producers started replanting domestically. Seems like a real waste of time, this. And all the vineyards started growing again. And within 20 years, Malbec plants had tripled and once again became the most planted variety with over 44,000 hectares planted today. 1 in 5 vines in Argentina is in fact Malbec.
That's not a surprise to anybody.
No, of course not. But it's a crazy story, though. Eh? Roller coaster. I was like, oh yeah, we're pulling it all out. I haven't planted it back in again. I was like, what are you doing? It's like you could have had these beautiful old vines now.
At the point where they started to replant them, there must have been some dudes that were like, you know, the meme of the Indian guy at the cricket match is like that.
Yeah.
There's like one, just like one guy is like, usually probably the guy that had to pull it all out by hand. And he's like that. What the fuck are you talking about? No, I'm not going to replant these vines.
Today, Malbec is the champion wine of Argentina.
Liz and Paul just dropped the taste notes. Okay. Firstly, the response to what an agronomist is, you just put soil stuff.
Soil stuff.
And then this is bloody lovely.
Thank
so
you.
A huge fan of the Tucumán Reserve Malbec. Just FYI, this is the princely sum of, I'm going to say about 24 quid.
This is the reserve as well. They do make an entry level.
We don't have that on our shelves currently. The Tucumán Reserve.
Come on, buy some of my wine, man.
Fuck yourself, man. All we stock is your wine now. The Reserve Malbec, 24 quid. Malbec 30 gets you 30% off.
I didn't agree to that. So let me just give you the beautiful slogan that I've written down here. Don't know which website I nicked this off, but I find it beautiful. Today, Malbec is the champion wine of Argentina and famous worldwide for its Malbec. 85% of the world's production actually comes from Argentina. So there you go. Tucumán, actually quite a young company. Started off in 2005. Sort of like the ever sort of ethos of a young wine producing company, passion and devotion, hard work to get it with tireless search. But actually, what
Paul has said, this has a nose to palate ratio that rivals FMC.
Wow! Big talk there. Thank you so much.
Well, it's clearly Leslie this time is a bold claim, because I've got to be honest with you, that hasn't been much.
I think it's
purely because the FMC is
one of your favorite wines of all time.
Incomparable. You're actually going to swallow this mouthful.
Oh, that's so soft. Chocolatey. I like it a lot. It's the first time tasting this one.
Interesting, you know. I'm
really soft now.
First time tasting it. It's a £24 wine.
Still got grippy tannins.
Reserve, a lot of reserve wines in there.
Ooh.
It's super integrated. Like, it's almost forgettable in a positive sense of that word. In other words,
forgettable is not a great word.
Forgettable is a bad word for it. So not forgettable. It's almost quite it's so mellow that it's a wine that you could just drink and drink and drink and not get sick of. It can do all manner. I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
So good story, Tom. Have you got time to tell it again?
I mean, yeah, I do.
This
This is our podcast, mate. We can say whatever the fuck we want as many times as we want to say it.
Really violety, cherry. There's like a little bit of a nuttiness as well. Got a meat, got a bit of everything. Really, really layered, complex, delicious. So started off in 2005, driven by passion and devotion. Work together with tireless search for excellence in every detail, which is like the sort of slogan. But the family originally came from the north parts of Argentina, like I said, roots in sugarcane production in the Tucumán region of Argentina, like I said. The family is made up by Juan Jose Bodeguer, which is him and his wife Celia and their 3 children who are doing most of the work. They've got a consultant winemaker in as well, someone who worked in Ribera del Duero and parts of Australia. So he, in 2008, had the first vintage, and he's been with the company since then. So he's been the consultant winemaker or head winemaker, whatever you want to call it, since day one. They started off in Maipo Valley, which is a sub-region of Mendoza.
Maipo, yeah. Okay.
Maipo. Yeah, Maipo. Purchasing 100 hectares of land. That first happened in 2008. And
so that's quite a bold move to get 100 hectares straight away when Montes has built up 100 to 100 hectares.
Yeah, man, they started off very, very small. Yeah, this is obviously came from a little bit of kick cash. Money. But you know, he always had.
It's nice to have money.
That's what he's. I always dreamt of making wine. Okay,
one of them pricks.
Well, you know. Building their own winery in 2008. That's when the first vintage occurred. 35 kilometers south of Mendoza city. Water for irrigation is drawn from a specially constructed reservoir, so it's relatively state-of-the-art, the winery as well. And they further grew their estate into Luján de Cuyo, which is another sub-region of Mendoza. So this is really idiosyncratically Mendoza. Okay, so there's other sub-regions like Uco Valley, where we're going to have a look at with this one, and then we're going into Salta in the north parts of Argentina, the highest parts of the Andes where viticulture happens. They create wines that follow their ethos today, over 15 years still. Each wine brand, because they do certain tiers, well, there's an entry level, then there's the Tucumán, normal, then there's the reserve range. And I'm sure that they make some top end stuff as well, but this is the only one that we import. We also buy some tank wines of these guys, by the way. So we import massive tanks of thousands of hectoliters of wine, and then we bring it over to the UK, we bottle it here in the UK, and we create our own label and stuff, which is incredibly fascinating for me to learn all these aspects of the wine business, which is obviously.
How are you finding the new job?
Oh man, amazing! Yeah, it's absolutely perfect for me. You know, it's more of a relatively family orientated company. It's relatively small. I've actually got a voice, like I said in previous tastings.
I think it would have been hard to go from running your own business with me, where you've got an equal voice, to go into somewhere where you're just
you go and sell wine. You know,
sell wine. Just like, well, I think we should do it. I don't give a fuck what
your opinions do not matter. But in this company, they actually do. You know, so you know, I'm part of these conversations of wines being labeled, of what names we're going to give to these wines and stuff, because we can come up with our own concept. You know, it's superb. It's for me.
So could you make a grapes grain Malbec that we could pour?
We could, absolutely. Absolutely, we can do a white label on Malbec. Yeah, man. If you buy 300,000 hectoliters of it, yeah, no problem. You'll have it for a long, long time. But yeah, so we work together closely with this.
Can I get it like on layaway?
Yeah, but yeah, no, we can actually talk about that. In 2012, Bodegas Bodeguer was awarded the best new Mendoza winery as well. Do you want me to go into the winemaker straight away?
I'm on a roll. I'm getting more in, and it might be because
I like this a lot.
I'm a big fan of this. This is my fave so far, and I was very taken with the Montes.
Yeah, and I
so
like
I'm quite.
I'm so pleased, because this is one I've not tried yet. And now, because I've tried it, I will now have more confidence in the field to sell this.
I've got to be honest with you. Looking at the final wine that we're going to move on to, once Barry's told us a little bit more about this, with the Mosquita Muerta. This is a fucking top shelf. This is a £50 bottle of wine, and it fucking looks it. It's got It's got a textured label.
It's classy. It's got
beautiful.
gold.
It's a stunning looking bottle. It's 2017. So this, we are actually getting a bit of age on it. This, you know, you were going to taste this, and you're going to be like, yeah. I mean, it's got a 93 from Robert Parker.
Yeah.
That is Robert Parker.
I don't think it's Robert Parker. I looked at the exact same things. Like, is that his signature?
It's not.
And people like a medal, don't they? It's got 91 points in the decanter as well. The decanter's obviously quite.
But I guess when this one's here, you're like, yeah, it's going to be good. But it's also a £50 bottle of wine. So if it's not good, I'm going to be fucking furious. Whereas this, yeah, exactly. This is 24 quid's worth of wine, and this, yeah, you're coming home with me. Well, you're staying home with me.
I like this a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
It's got,
and I'll tell you when your wines are shit. Number one, I will not go back to it.
Delicious.
Until I've got teenage kids, and bear in mind I have no kids, nor in fact a girlfriend. So we're away.
It's not going to happen because he's in menopause now as well. So
it doesn't happen for boys anyway. So I'll tell you when your wines are shit, but that's a really, really approachable wine.
I put forward.
Yeah.
Nice.
We've broken the seal here, gang.
Very nice. When it comes to the winemaking, so the actual fruit for this wine is sourced in both estates that they've got. So in Lujan de Cuyo, planted in 1935 at 985 meters of altitude.
So those vines that were planted in 1935, how many of those are still producing now?
All of them, otherwise we'll pull them out. But it will produce very little. So this is low yielding, old vine matter. Which will give concentration of flavor.
That's a 90-year-old vine.
But some of it.
How much has been pulled out and younger?
There will be younger vines there as well, but there is vine matter from 1935 when it was planted, when this vineyard was planted. So this is at just under 1,000 meters of altitude. And then from La Consulta in San Carlos, which is another sub-region, but this time of Maipu, is at 1,100 meters altitude, like I said before. Okay. And this was planted in 1996. Fruit undergoes 30 days of natural fermentation. So there's indigenous yeast that come to play here. Daily cap management. So cap management means when fermentation occurs in the fermentation vessel, usually stainless steel, can sometimes be concrete egg as well, or some sort of like cement kind of vat kind of thing. When that occurs, CO2 is a byproduct of fermentation, and that because it's been pressed and the skins are lighter than exactly. But when it sits there and you don't pump wine over, you don't move those skins through, they start to kind of like become a bit, how do you say, funky?
Yeah,
a bit rotty and a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Bit funky.
It starts to dry out. It starts to smell and taste a little bit. Yeah.
Does it? Yeah.
And when you're dealing with something that is, you know, a food product that is consumed by that, any kind of contact with that has the potential of tainting,
because it starts oxidizing as well. So it does a few things, moving that around. Firstly, keeping the cap fresh, but also it will extract more phenolics again, more color from the skins. It is done quite often that the pumping over or the punching on there happens in red wine making. Daily cap management at medium to high temperatures, so not exactly cooking at 30% here. These were between sort of like 20 and 25 degrees. These sit at a relatively lower aspect as well because it's a longer fermentation of 30 days. Aged for 12 months then, and 50% French and American oak, second and third use. So, you know, that vanilla, that sort of toffee, underlying butterscotch,
Americano,
that a little bit more comforting kind of vibe. That's what you get from this. A little bit about the presentation of the wine. So the name comes from Tuku, as in the family home, Tuku man, and men, those are Tuku men. Label is designed by award-winning designer Guillaume Malia, who took inspiration from the paint houses in Boca. And like, you know, old sort of like posters that you know, like, you know, that they put on the side of buildings and stuff. So sort of like that bricky kind of color that you see on the label kind of represents it. I love that. And sort of like the different lettering and everything. Yeah, it's very well thought about. Very, very delicious Malbec indeed. Very, very pleased with that.
I would
purchase.
I'm happy.
So should you.
I'm happy with that. It's a good one. Malbec 30% off. Fucking you can't sleep on that one, gang. You can't sleep on
licoricey. Yeah, it's a delightful drop.
Okay.
I will drop it.
So we're 3 wines in.
Delicious, thank you.
Going well. You feeling good? Yeah, how about you guys at home? You guys at home feeling good as well?
I'm always a bit nervous when we do, you know, wines from my portfolio that I've not tried before. It's like, I'm taking a stab in the dark here. It's like, could well be a car crash here. But yeah,
on paper, it fits the bill of exactly what we needed it to do. That's why we put it forward when we were having a chat about it 6 weeks ago. Now it's come to it, you're like,
I'm not sure. Oh God, I'm having that Tuckerman. No, really, really pleased with that. And also the non-reserve, it's a little bit more, what you expect from a house Malbec. It's less thought about, it's less sort of structured.
So I'll tell you what my learning is from Malbec is apart the French one where the tannins were slightly overwhelming. Malbec it's less of a heavy wine
than people think.
Than people think. People think it is this horrific thing that you can only enjoy with a steak that's got like a quarter inch of crust on it. You know what I mean? Like that's the only way. That's the Malbec's a bit heavy. It's a bit heavy. It's not actually. It's a very elegant wine. But I have a feeling like this one is going to be slightly.
It smells like Tom Ford in a good way. It's mad.
God damn.
Okay, sorry. We're jumping out.
Wine number 4. Wine number 4. The Mosquita Muerta.
By Familia. Go on.
Milan. Familia Milan. The Mosquita Muerta Malbec from the Uco Valley. 50% Chacaya's estate. 50% El Manzano estate.
Single vineyards.
Mosquita Muerta, shy and harmless, plays with the silence while others loose with the exaggerated flutter. That was not somebody who has English as their first language who wrote that.
No. Oh mate, it was amazing because I visited their website as well. You do like Google Translate.
I think they did as well. Mosquita Muerta, who has a hidden motive, a plan between hands. Don't mess with her, or you will be caught forever.
Is that actually what it says?
It's fucking gibberish. Manuel Harris. Fermentation in French oak barrels and concrete tanks. 60% of this wine was aged in first use French oak barrels during 16 months. 40% in concrete tanks. Mosquita Muerta Malbec reveals aromas of flowers, wild berries, herbs, and moderate influence from the oak aging. Very good. Very, very nice. So despite the fucking gibberish written on the back, though, I've got to be honest with you. Okay, so obviously, if I tried to write something in Spanish, that would be worse, right? But I'm also not internationally exporting my wine to English-speaking countries, where just a single copywriter of somebody like Argentina isn't that far away from fucking America can get somebody down and go, does this make sense? No. Kind of please rewrite. Yeah. Thank you, please. That's somebody who had an elevated level of confidence.
You watch way too much Nacho Libre, by the way. How many times do you watch that, mate?
I do not know. I'm tired of being paid to lose. I want to win. But that is somebody who has a ridiculous like main character energy, and that was like, yeah, of course I can. Of course, I can write in English. You don't speak English. I can use the Google Translate.
Obviously, it's a small company couldn't afford a translator. There you go. Hey, but you know that Mosquita Muerta is actually an expression in Spanish, and what it means, it's used to describe a person of little potential for success. This is again directly from the translator website. So if it's not great English, then you know why. Who ends up accomplishing a remarkable feat.
So Muerta is, I think this is specifically a woman.
No, it could be no, and that's specifically said on the website as well. It could be a person, it could be him or her.
Because I don't speak Spanish, so obviously I wouldn't be able to write it. But Mosquita and Muerta feel like if it ends in A, that's feminine. But then French could be le or la.
As Lizzie, she's fluent in Spanish.
Are you? It means a snake in the grass or someone who's two-faced.
Oh.
There you go. Okay. She was fucking Jamie Vernon quick there.
There you go. But yeah, Jose Milan chose this name to mock the ones that doubted him on his quest to realize his dream, becoming a wine business entrepreneur.
Fan Davidosi.
But the beauty is obviously a lot of Malbec, right? In Argentina gets exported. Remember, that's how it became super popular because people abroad fell in love with Malbec. 70% of Mosquita Muerta's wine actually
Mosquita Muerta.
gets sold in Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires.
But the wine has become an overnight success amongst Argentinian wine.
Overnight success. Right, should we dissect? We need to dissect because this is sitting here and it's staring at everybody at home and staring at us now as well. Now,
here we go.
Oh boy,
this is a little bit.
We are now fully into the inkiest of inkies. That is Barry Thumb Test.
Yeah, it's gone. But man, oh. It's yeah.
We've been making that joke for 3 years. It's still great.
But there is.
By the way, what we're in April now.
End of April.
So
I get paid next week. What's up?
You get paid now?
Yeah, I know. Right?
So here's an interesting thing. When do you think our first live tasting was?
Was it in? Must have been.
It was probably March
or April, yeah, 2020.
Here's the 3 years of live tastings and making the same fucking jokes.
Feels longer. Funny that.
The other thing is like butter wouldn't melt. Basically, an amalgamation of those three sayings. Mosquita Muerta is basically
But what about this? Hold on a minute. What about this expression then that I got of their website? Does that not make any sense to you, Lizzie? Used to describe a person of little potential, someone who's going to be a failure, pretty much is what they're explaining here for success, who ends up accomplishing a remarkable feat and then turns it around and then accomplishes what he set out to do.
From what she's just described there, that is.
I'll email him because I'm friends.
Well, you're connected now, aren't you?
Well, yeah. It's actually one of my brands.
You're fully integrated.
Right,
come on, dissect the wine.
Oh yeah, we're still doing this.
Really deep, rich, and intense color.
There's no window. There's no other color.
No.
Where's the purples?
Maybe a slight. No, you're right. This is. But it's actually peculiarly not as extracted and stainy as maybe.
The nose is loopy though. What is that? It's like a perfume. It is literally like something like a what do you call one of those things with the sticks in it? Like a fancy one. Yeah, but not one from Airwick or whatever it's called. No, like one that you get in dead stock general store, like one that's 60 quid. You know what I mean? I'm looking at you, Susie. You know which ones I mean. She got me a one for my car. It's like I don't want that smell in my car. It's like fucking open up, like it's like so strong.
She was like. That was £60.
Oh, thanks, love. Oh, great. No. I love you, love. It's a great smell in my car. But isn't it so perfumed? It's like
big time.
Floral, licoricey, black. Oh, man. I could just literally go like that. Go on the pull. And I won't, Suze. Joking.
It's okay. She's not watching.
I know she's not.
Oh, best of the night.
Beautiful. Smells great. Anyway, that's all it tastes. Again, this is one of those wines like, it's expensive on the list, must be good. You never know.
What's a thinker? It's a real thinker. It's one thing which is quite interesting.
That's amazing.
Quite interesting is that we have actually 13.5%. 14.5%, 13.5%. This is the lowest ABV.
Yeah, that's nice. But it's so concentrated and extracted, right?
That's the best word, I think. Concentrated.
Wow.
There's super concentrated flavors. It lingers.
It's still going
and changes.
Finish is incredible. So focus on after you swallow the wine. What does the aftertaste do for you? How long does it linger for? Does it change into anything else? I think this is this is worthy of the price tag. I think this is absolutely beautiful.
Holy shit.
Beautiful. Still going. I swallowed this about a minute ago, I think. And the tannins are compared to any of that
about it. So I guess one thing which is immediately obvious here is that we are talking about double the amount of time in bottle. Because this is a 2017 vintage.
Yeah, there you go.
And 2017 It would have probably
6
undergone.
years ago.
You will be able to tell us, and you will tell us shortly how much time it spent in oak, how much time how long the maceration was, how much time it. But regardless of anything else, it has spent a minimum
16.
of 3 years more because it was harvested 3 years earlier. But a minimum of 3 years more in that bottle, and that intense, aggressive, potent, transformative event that was the fermentation and bottle. There was the harvesting, pressing, fermentation, and bottling of this wine has been allowed to rest like a good steak for 3 years in that bottle, and that has got to be a truly, truly
it's important, man.
formative act.
When things are, for the lack of a better explanation, aggressive, acid, alcohol, tannin structure, all those things. That's why we keep things in bottle, and cellar things.
The best example I remember us ever doing is that Bodegas LAN producer spotlight, where they had.
That's funny. I don't remember that. Was that still in the shop? Yeah, like.
No, it was online, but we did the D12.
Yeah.
Criantha.
Yeah.
And then we also did I think just the regular Criantha.
And the single vineyard. What's that called?
We've got the Coolman. But this I don't think we did that one.
Okay.
I think we did the regular Criantha, the D12 Criantha, which is the same price as the Reserva. Then we did the Reserva, and then we did the Grand Reserva, right? And the reason why this always jumps into my head is because what they chose to do with that D12, and the reason why that Criantha was the same price as the Reserva, which obviously is that much longer, is because what they chose to do was to use the minimum amount of time in oak and the maximum amount of time in bottle, because that time in bottle is like resting a steak after you cooked it.
Softening process, man.
Exactly. And that's what this wine is. It's soft and it allows all of the... really, really good. Like I say, I'll tell you when your wines are shit, man.
Coffee,
but
chocolate.
Oh my god, that is really, really good.
The finish in particular is something that
What do you guys think at home? Because I've got to be honest with you, this is outstanding. Liverpool, the finish is incredible.
Yeah, but it's a lengthy finish is not really something that I associate with Malbec at all. It's like normally like it's not really something like it's a thinking wine for me. Do you know what I mean? But this really is. You can tell that this is a fine wine. You can tell that this is worthy of the price tag because it is showing in a completely different way than the previous
$48.50 on our shelves.
Ooh.
So if you want to get this for 30 quid, use Malbec 30 at checkout.
I mean,
I have no idea why you wouldn't be buying a case of that immediately.
Do it, because that goes on my figures as well. Amazing. No, that's a spectacular bottle of wine. These guys produce other expressions as well, by the way. They do one called Pispi, which is one of their sort of like top end wines, and then one of them is called Satro di Porto, I think. Let me just quickly get that up, and that is like their top end wine that they produce, and it's because we had that on the trade show recently at NRB, and it was unbelievable. Let me just have a quick look at that one. This is great TV. Sorry.
So for me, this wine is it has that benefit of that little bit extra age. It'd be very interesting to see where it goes from here. 2017 is obviously it's
Sapo di Otro Pozzo. What does that mean, Lizzie? Has that got a surely that's good, but that one is actually it's cheaper than this one. So this is that top end one. I thought that one was more expensive.
This is that top
end. Yeah, also Uco Valley. So this is a sub-region of Mendoza again, but Uco Valley is more altitude. Yeah, gorgeous. So we went straight for the big boy here. Hey, love it. We could do a little producer spotlight on this, because they make quite a few wines that we import.
Literally, it translates as toad from another well. You are a resource. I'm super impressed. What is it?
Sapo de Pozzo Otro. Di Otro Pozzo.
I was quite Italian. Right? Sapo
di Otro Pozzo.
So, I mean, I guess you cannot translate idiom. Idiom is so there you go. In English, the equivalent would be a fish out of water. You're not spitting anymore.
So good. No, no,
So
I did a little bit and I felt so bad.
Tell us a little bit more about this wine in particular, because it's super shining. It's twice the price of all the other wines. Okay, so
it doesn't even drink like a Malbec to me. Anyway, like I said, 70% of the Mosquito Muerta production is actually sold in Argentina, so in Buenos Aires, which is crazy because most of the Malbec usually gets exported to,
I guess, a shitload to us here, because we go crazy.
If you don't have Malbec on your menu in a on-trade establishment in the hospitality sector, then people lose their shit. You know, you need to have Malbec on by the glass. 2002 was an incredible year for the Milan family. It's where they bought their first winery. It's actually got a name. It's called Toneles, which was built in 1922, completely abandoned. And they restored it, upgraded the building into a state-of-the-art winery. And in 2008, the Argentinian government gave the winery Heritage of Mendoza status, which is incredible. Mosquita Muerta, the label, was established in 2009. And the main idea was creating sort of like premium wine, and particularly blended wines, not just from Malbec. So the other wines that I'm talking about here, they've got other varietals in there. So one of them is a riff on a Bordeaux. The other one is a riff on a Rhone. They do stuff with Cabernet Franc. Really, really interesting wines for sure. So sourcing fruit from Argentina's finest regions as well, such as Gualatar. What do you say that? Gualtalara. That's a tough one. Anyway, forget about that one. Vista Flores.
Gualtajaray.
So all sub-regions of Mendoza, really, and particularly Uco Valley, Lujan de Cuyo, and Cachayas as well. Focused on sustainability during the whole process, literally from start in the vineyards, drip irrigation, all that kind of stuff. Again, reducing that water usage footprint, even looking at the packaging for the entry-level wines, not this one, but you know, the cheaper wines come in like lighter glass, lighter packaging, everything biodegradable and recyclable, which is a great feat. When it comes to winemaking, all this fruit is sourced from the two highest estates within their portfolio.
So we are
Uco Valley
higher now.
So we're going from Mendoza, and then Uco Valley is slightly more inside of the Andes. So you're going higher elevation here, between 1,250 meters altitude and 1,350 meters altitude. 50% from Los Cachayas, which is a single vineyard, and 50% from El Manso.
So Lizzie just had a look at their website. All of the names are idiomatic expressions. So the equivalent of like saying a fish out of water would be idiom, which on the literal translation doesn't mean anything, but in the language actually does mean something. She said the language geek in me is loving this. Juice spotlight question mark. So
yeah,
it looks like we've got one person.
I think that they also do one which is the sheep and wolves clothing, the Condrero de Piel de Lobo.
The Piel de Lobo.
Yeah, that's
which was supposed to be, but we put this one because we couldn't get any of that one. Same price. So it would be about 22.
Packaging is outrageous, literally like a wolf with like a sheep mask and stuff. It's really, really, really cool brand.
Yeah, it's really, really great. Do you know what it also is, mate? Out of stock, so we couldn't order it.
It's on the water, guys. You know, stuff from South America takes about 3 months to get here.
You're trying to get Argentinian Malbec from South Africa, mate. That's a real problem.
Yeah, did I say South Africa? I almost said South America.
Listen, my bro.
But you know,
little pili.
Don't worry. I think
spinnacle.
I think a producer spotlight is definitely something that we can do. I might even be able to get someone from the winery involved with that.
Shall we do something online, or shall we do something in store, or shall we do something both? Anyway, we'll circle back to that, but.
Whatever I taste from these guys is of incredible quality.
Is it just Malbec they knock out, or do they?
No. If you listen to what I was actually saying a minute ago, it was like that they don't just deal in Malbec; they focus on creating premium blended wines from other varietals as well.
Is it just red wines they knock out?
Yeah, I know they make Chardonnay as well. Okay.
Yeah, obviously.
Winemaking when it comes to that. So the fruits. We already got to that. So high altitude vineyards within Uco Valley, manual harvest, which isn't surprising, separated over several different days to obtain optimal phenolic ripeness. So they go into the vineyards day in, day out, harvest the fully ripe bunches, and then they go back a day later and then harvest those, and then they vinify those separately. So what they harvest, they start vinifying that straight away, and then when they go in next, then that gets vinified again separately. So each intake ferments separately in oak barrels and in concrete eggs. So these concrete eggs is something that actually came from, I think the guys behind that are a company called Zorzal, and I think they are actually from Argentina.
Huge fan of that.
So you see that quite a lot. And what it does, it creates a state of flux. So it creates a vortex. Whilst fermentation, a byproduct of that is CO2, it because of this sort of egg shape, it continuously moves the wine around inside the fermentation vessel. Whilst it's fermenting, it will sort of poop out lees, so dead yeast cells, and that constantly gets stirred throughout the wine, creating a softer product. 60% of it is then aged in first use French oak for 16 months. So 40% is then kept back in concrete and gets then blended together. What do you want, mate? What do you want? Oh, palate cleanser. Chocolate.
We're gonna fucking need it.
91 points in the counter in 2021. Everybody loves a medal, and particularly the consumer. So for us and for us as an importer, that is quite important. But it's still an opinion. And my opinion on this wine is that it's flipping delicious, really, really good wine.
That is,
but it's I've not tasted a Malbec like this before.
I've got to be honest with you. That is it's hard. I don't have the same sort of.
No, but as in Malbec, have you ever tried a more memorable Malbec than that? I don't think I have. I can't think.
I don't know, because I don't necessarily know that I would particularly ever pick a Malbec because the high tannin.
Today's been fun for you, hasn't it?
Well, no, but I've always enjoyed Malbec that I've drunk.
Good save.
I think the tannin would always be perhaps a barrier of entry for me. Because I'm a bit of a wee when it comes to that.
I want fruit juice.
I just want like diluted jam.
I just want 10%. Fruity juicy. I just want the fruit shoots, really.
Keanu Reeves is John Constantine. So I don't know that I would necessarily pick a Malbec out of a lineup in terms of the wine that I would choose, but I have, without a shadow of a doubt, had some exceptional Malbecs, some of which I'm thinking Los Intocables, some of that, where almost that's like you've done so much that it's unrecognizable as a Malbec.
Yeah, no, that's as far removed from a great Malbec.
Feels to me that it hasn't had extraordinary amount of winemaking.
No. It's
but what it has had is it's not been fermented bone dry, and therefore it doesn't have. You're not fighting against alcohol. The extra time in the bottle means the tannins have softened, and it's ticking all of the boxes. Really huge fan of that one. That's immediately gone into my. This is staying with me in my.
I was going to say, it's like I'm going to take that one. I think
incorrect.
Oh, okay.
No.
Gorgeous bottle of wine. The finish in particular is quite
completely agree.
Breathtaking.
So let's do a 1, 2, 3, shall we? I feel like it's going to be fairly easy, this one.
Yeah,
and I think that number one is not going to get a look in many places because it's just too young to be really enjoyed.
I'll take that. Can I take that with me and see? I would ask for food because there is no food today. It's like not even any cheese.
No.
Yeah,
absolutely right. So I think 4-3-2.
And we're in complete agreement here.
4-3-2.
I could on a different day I could probably swap those two around, but that's my wine. I'm going to pick that up. No,
I would agree that it would be possible to switch them around.
These are quite neck and necky. I think they were both really delicious.
I mean, they're separated in terms of cost by a quid. A couple of quid, and I think that really is quite obvious that they are sort of on a par. This could only be the top wine because it's a £50 bottle of wine.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, we have been in circumstances where the best wine, price-wise, has not been the best drinking wine on the night. That's definitely happened. There is no two ways about that.
No, I agree.
But this is Man City. And yeah, of course they won because they bought the league. Year in, year out.
Whatever.
Liz and Paul both. Actually, no, I'm completely wrong. Liz has gone 4-3-2, and Paul has gone 3-4-2. So Paul has put the Tucumen above Mosquita Muerta. And here we go. Jenny has gone 4-3-2 and 2-4-3. So as actually the
who said 243?
Jenny Conway has gone 243. So the Malbec chit is...
Yeah, but who specifically and what's your address? Because I'll come down and I'll throw you. It's not one of my wines. I can't put that one in front.
Andy's gone 243. So
all right, Andy. I'll be
Okay.
seeing you later, mate.
Sue is keeping quiet. But I think we're going to move on now to.
Hey, this is something really, really special, because this is something I've worked with, studied it, never tasted it though. I've studied this one multiple times.
So if you haven't gone for the bonus wine, we won't feel bad if you fuck off and have the rest of your Friday night. If you do decide to do that, thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one. Hopefully Cardiff Friday next Friday, because that's going to be an absolute doozy.
My God.
Go for the bonus. If you either go for the bonus Cuvée de Frati, Sue's gone 4-3-1. So she's actually put the Cahors. She's picked all of your wines.
Good. Who's this?
Sue Diamond. Her email is sue@morganrow.co.uk.
I'll pay you later, Sue.
Okay, there we go.
Transfer now.
So as I mentioned, I worked this out based on the fact that the price that I was looking at was a full 30% less than what it actually cost me. I thought this was going to cost me 47 quid plus VAT, and therefore I was charging, if you went for the full bottle, I think 80 quid, inclusive of VAT. Actually, this cost me 68 quid, exclusive of VAT. So I have...
Who bought the full bottle though?
Paul.
Oh, yeah, that's fine then.
Paul and Lizzie, who have been on every tasting ever since we've done it. So
that's completely
feel like they've earned basically the free wine. It's not free, but I haven't made any money on it. So yeah. But this is thanks, Jenny. See you later. See you on the next one. So this is the Altura Maxima. As the name would suggest, we are talking about the highest altitude it is
maximum.
Altitude maximum. Altitude maximum. This is the highest.
Sounds like
it's possible to make fucking grapes grow.
Yes.
This is from Bodegas Colomé, who specialize, I would say, in saltese wines.
Also, the oldest working winery in Argentina.
And it's at the highest altitude. What the fuck? Maybe that's why, because that's their USP, because we do shit at 3 kilometers above sea level, and they've survived where other ones have fallen away. Yeah. But the Altura Maxima, this is a 100% Malbec grown at 3,111 meters above sea level, sustainably farmed 25 hectares. They only produce 25 barrels. This vineyard was planted in 2007, which is quite young.
And fruit didn't arrive until 2012 or something like that, wasn't it?
They harvest 12 tons. Soil type is calcareous and granite. The upper Calchagui Valley in Salta, 24 months in barrel. And on the front of the bottle here, this is bottle number 4,171 of 9,500. So they produce
less than 10,000 bottles.
Less than 10,000 bottles a year. Let's have a fucking crack. All of this, see, all of that information was all on the back of the bottle, which I personally fucking love.
Actually telling you something about
There's
it.
Actually telling you something about
something is this special.
But I mean,
it needs to tell a story.
So this is on
not just by
the shelves at. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
118 quid a bottle. So if you paid £80 a bottle for this, you got yourself a deal. And if you use Malbec 30, you still won't be paying £80 a bottle for it. Malbec 30 will get you 36 quid off it. So you're not a million miles away.
No one cares about this wine. It's not from Morgan.
Let's dissect.
Yolks.
Let's dissect. So we're now... What vintage is this?
Because it looks brown. Is that what it looks at? Yeah.
So this is 2017 as well. This is the same vintage as this one.
It's almost like we didn't plan it, but we planned it. Like every time. Oh, this is a coinkydink. We planned that. We planned that.
100% planned.
Yeah, looks a little bit brown.
It's brown as fuck, boy. That is a brown boy. That
Not
was a weird phrase.
no.
With strange racial undertones that were completely
Let's quickly
unintentional.
move on. It's not really staining the tannins either. It's no, it is got sort of that bricky garnet kind of vibe and the outlines of the halo of the
Yeah, I
wine.
mean, yeah.
The,
Fucking. Wowzers.
It's really unusual, and that, obviously,
It's, you know what it smells. And this is such an obvious trite thing to say. You know what it smells like? It smells fucking expensive, yo.
smells
There's
meaty.
meat, and but
Very
unlike cured meat, this is raw meat.
Can you smell any fruit though?
No.
I'm struggling with the fruit aspect. Let me just have a little look at the actual tasting notes of the official website, because that would be interesting to see what they.
Oh my
got to
fucking
say.
Jesus, that is just
Very intriguing. It's
That
very,
is-
very,
that is-
very
wow.
different. Very different though.
Is it Malbec?
I don't know.
I mean,
Well, it's got to
yeah,
be. But
It's 100%. As in, like, literally, the cepage is 100% Malbec.
2017 vintage, yeah.
Yeah.
So what they describe as the tasting notes:
Savory, sun-dried tomato,
white flower.
white flour.
The wine is intense, dark purple in color, with aromas of white flower, red berry, and black fruit, with a touch of spiciness and minerality. The wine is beautifully textured with a long, opulent finish and elegant tannin. Well, I can live with that. But the aromas, I'm not getting any of that.
White flour. Go. What the fuck are you talking about? This is Sue Diamond has just commented with wow. Liz important.
Oh, have you got
Massive.
some thoughts, Sue? Nice one. Will this change your opinion on the
Yeah,
lineup?
if it doesn't, then I don't know what the hell's going on with the world.
It is very savoury on the nose for me.
Yeah,
It smells. It smells
Sun-dried, sun-blushed tomato.
nice.
Some Mediterranean herb.
Olive.
Olive.
Is that what I smell? I think olive.
Listen, Paul. White flour, Paul. Fuck off.
Yeah. This is literally on
who's
the
noticing this wine and
website.
going, yeah, it's full of white flour. This.
I don't think any Malbec smells of white flour. Let's get it right, shall we? If you're going to pick a flower, it's going to be something like
Right, hang
violet
on,
or something like that.
So they've obviously just had a fucking stroke, but I had to reset my nose.
Yeah, honestly, had a stroke.
But what did you say?
Olive,
Olive. Right, okay.
like briny, olivey, sort of like, it's like it smells salt. You know what I mean? Maybe even like this is really weird. Like
That is intriguing.
I have well, I know you don't like anchovies specifically, but me and Susie have, like, when we have a fancy starter and we get some nice sourdough, we have these really expensive anchovy fillets.
Boccherones.
No, because they're white anchovy fillets. These are like the salty ones, the really salty ones. Yeah, I know, not for you. Amazing though with the martini. That's what that reminds me of. It just got that sort of like, not that it's fishy, but it's got salty. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'll go along with that.
It's
got something brined,
like,
but it could be brined capers.
no, it's anchovy.
It's got something salty and brined.
Amazing nose. Sun-dried tomato tapenade. I like that a lot. And maybe olive tapenade. That would be a great way of describing.
I like the raw meat thing that we were talking about earlier. So that steak pre-cooking, where it's almost like it's got an irony kind of fleshy aromas. Cheers, ladies and gents. Here is to the crescendo of crescendos.
Oh my God.
Jesus fucking Christ. That's Jason Bourne.
Wow. Like cream soda.
More pronounced tannins than the previous one. A little bit more drying on the palate, but I always find that with wines that do that,
that's amazing.
You end up with a more refined and structured wines.
Wow. It's quite grainy, the tannins. But the first initial explosion of fruit on my palate, and it was do you know the Schweppes cream
It's got
soda?
like a little raisin Pedro Jimenez undercurrent underneath it without any of the sweetness, obviously.
Tannins are quite prominent, aren't they? But that makes sense. Think about it, right? We're at 3,000 meters altitude. This barren land is almost desertified, right? Because
Yeah, fucking nothing can live there.
nothing can live there. When they planted these vines, the first 8 or 9, or I don't know the exact amount of years. I've written it down somewhere. I think the first 8 years, nothing grew. It wasn't just no fruit. The vines were dead. It was struggling. You know, it's so close to that hole in the ozone layer. So you got those UV rays. It has to create this really intense, thick skin, smoke berry,
Tiny
tiny
berries.
clusters.
So an enormous amount of interaction between the amount of juice and the amount of skin.
To flesh ratio
Like, forget about it.
Will be so different to any of these.
It's almost like harvesting juniper berries rather than grapes. You know, it's like
really, the tannins really linger. So this, as a food wine, would be absolutely sensational. Is it one of the most craziest things I've ever tried? Absolutely. Did you ever try the Altura Maxima Sauvignon Blanc?
No, but I do. Maybe I did.
Me and Jen, we had a bottle of it. Wow, it was like nothing like a Sauvignon Blanc. This doesn't act like a Malbec in the glass at all. It's because of these extreme kind of.
So there's something written on the back of the bottle here. So the true expression of terroir in this Malbec comes from the extreme altitude at which the vineyard sits. It receives much more sun, much less UV protection, producing thicker skinned grapes that deliver a more robust mouthfeel supported by fresh acidity. The true expression of terroir in this Malbec comes from the extreme altitude at which this vineyard sits. That's
like I'm in a loop, is it?
No, that requires
rereading,
saying it again in order to reinforce the point. It's just something that you do.
Okay.
You're a professional.
So you know that this is really high altitude. Okay, there you go.
Altura maxima.
The maximum altitude. No, a little bit about the actual bodega. So, like I said before, this is the oldest working winery in Argentina. So, in a way, this is telling me where these Malbec clippings from Cahors ended up in.
Very interesting. The winemaker is a guy called Thibaut Delmotte.
Is he à la Francais?
Fucking Frenchy.
He's
made a French style Malbec at altitude.
Some of the highest vineyards in the world, chosen by Tim Atkin, which is a very important figure in having opinions about wine in the wine world. And one of them, he even labeled this one of the first groves of Argentina, this bodega.
Oh, really?
Located in the upper Calchagui Valley, and has been founded by the Spanish governor of Salta, Nicolas Severo de Izmendi y Echelar, in 1854, and his daughter Ascension brought the first pre-phylloxera vines to Bodega Coloma. Here we go. Malbec and Cabernet. 3 vineyards were planted, 4 hectares each were planted that year, and the fruit from those wines are still used in his wines today. Swiss entrepreneur, a certain Donald Hess of Hess Collection in Napa Valley, you might know. This Swiss investor had a passion for wine, so he set up Hess productions in wine in Napa Valley, award-winning winery. I've tasted some of that stuff. It's absolutely sensational. It's unaffordable ones, hence why we never had it on the shelves. Liberty distribute it as well. And also, he purchased this bodega in 2001. Even though, you know, he purchased it, he still wanted to invest into it, right? So he wanted to invest in the winery, in the community, in the vineyards, everything. So the story goes a little bit wild. So not only in state of the art winery and in the vineyards he's invested, but also in the community, in the Colomé village specifically. So he's converted this sort of like derelict, poor, poverty-stricken village, and he's built he's converted into like a thriving community with like its own art museum now. It's got like a community center, it's got schools, everything built from this bodega. And I think 400 people live in this community and are all employed by Colomé. Absolutely amazing. I love that story. Today, the winery is 140 hectares of biodynamically run vineyards planted at altitude between 1,750 meters and 311, what we're tasting here right now. So the Altura Maxima Sagarin Blat, okay, we know that's very, very high. some of the highest vineyards in the world. It represents viticulture at its most extreme. He was labeled loco by the locals, for many, for trying to even plant grapes at this altitude in 2004. In the early years, the land and conditions proved too challenging. But fortune favored the brave, as they say, and 8 years later, the first vintage was created. That only produced very limited amount of bottles. Northwest facing slopes, aged ripening, warm days, cool nights, a day ownership of a whopping 25 degrees Celsius between day and night. And that 25.
That's why.
I put that even into perspective.
A 25 degrees swing between the day and the nighttime temperature is absolutely mental, and that's why this wine, which, and I've got to be honest with you, this is the 5th of 5, right? So arguably we're less perhaps perceptive than we were earlier on. Not arguably, we are. But this is 15.5%.
Oh, is it? Oh,
exactly.
God. Oh my God.
That's the point. We've been going down in ABV 14, 14 and a half,
13 and a half,
14 and a half, 14, 13 and a half, back up a further whopping 2% to 15.5%. But that extra 2%, which would stick out like a sore thumb poked in your fucking eye, is completely integrated. What Lizzie and Paul said, it gets less grainy the more you have it, and then it's all the wowness.
Is it?
Once you get kind of back onto its fucking level.
Because this was so silken.
Yeah, genuinely was. Genuinely was.
There was also the bottle age on it. What no,
the same. But this is 3,000 meters of sea level.
6 months more in oak.
6 months more in oak.
Thicker skins.
Higher ABV, thicker skins.
Sense.
That's why this is that much more of a challenging wine. But if this was a thinker, this is a fucking ponderer.
So diurnal shift, yeah. So it ensures that the fruit develops wonderful aromatics and retains good levels of acidity. Yeah, absolutely. Really, all makes sense, doesn't it? How these things work. The altitude soil, which is alluvial, sandy, and granite, by the way, and the semi-desert climate, plus the UV rays, produces thicker skinned grapes that give a more robust mouthfeel, supported by fresh acidity. Now, the winemaking then, hand harvest. Yeah,
obviously.
Who knew? Wild fermentation and maceration for 40 days.
40?
40. Wow. So the fermentation. So again,
you compare, so this is 30 days, and this is 40 days,
and that was 12.
And this the tannin structure in this is actually
fascinating.
Yeah, really, because it's just not how this is at higher altitude and at higher altitude and also a longer maceration, but a more integrated tannin structure.
Pump it over twice a day as well. Obviously, this is their baby. You know, this is a wine, you know, it only produces like less than 10,000 bottles a year, which is minuscule compared to the rest of their operations. So they will take very much tender love and care to this wine. So twice a day, they pump that wine over. Malolactic fermentation then took place in vats, which was aged for 24 months in French oak. Doesn't tell me if it's new or old, but I don't care. It's delicious.
Well, they probably put it on the back of here. No, they don't.
Beautiful. Have you got
it says 24 months.
Have you got another bottle of that?
Howard, but we do have this.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you guys want to buy it and use Malbec 30 and get 30% off, then
does it knock Mosquito Muerto off the top spot?
That's a very interesting question.
It does it for me. And it's not because I'm being biased. I just find this a little bit too tannic compared to that. That was like a silken little party in my mouth. Absolutely. That's the best Malbec I've ever had. I'm going to say it. There you go.
Mosquito Muerto?
The best Malbec I've ever had.
That's crazy to say.
No, it's not. Name a better Malbec that you've tried. This one.
Yeah.
Really? Liar.
No. It's a very complex and challenging wine. There's no doubt about that. It is. You said this was a fine wine. That's not a fine wine. This is a fine wine. But this is a wine that I would probably open if I had an equal number of these bottles. I would probably open this one more frequently than I would do this one. And I think that
more special occasion.
That probably.
Yeah,
no. That's almost the opposite. What I'm saying. Well, it's not the opposite, but if I had 6 bottles of this and 6 bottles of this, I would open this more frequently.
Because easy.
All right. If I had an infinite number of these bottles. And an infinite number of these bottles. That's the thought experiment. If I have a finite number, I'm going to pick this one because this is more expensive and therefore blah blah blah. Right? an infinite number, I had as many bottles as I possibly would want to, I would open this one probably 3 times out of 5, maybe 4 times out of 5. As good as this is, I'd open that one more frequently because that one is perhaps a more approachable wine.
Okay.
But
That's not
I have absolutely no doubt that.
Any questions? Any questions from you guys?
Liz and Paul agree with me. The thought experiment that we have laid out there has touched everybody involved. Apart from you.
Great tasting.
Because you don't understand it.
Yeah,
so this is funny. So before the tasting, Barry turned up and he says something which I immediately echo, which is like, I can't wait to taste 5 fucking Malbecs. Because at the start of the tasting is quite a daunting thing. It's like, because you know that after wine 3, it's gonna be fucking struggle street. I have not experienced that with this tasting at all.
No.
At all.
It became more interesting as it was the perfectly, because we said we're going to go this way, didn't we? Did we? I can't remember.
No.
But it was the perfect line.
Initially, we didn't have this one. We had the Condero de Piel de Lobo, but we couldn't get it. And we also had De Martino as a different Chilean Malbec.
All great happy accidents.
So that like those probably would have been swapped around just purely on a price point thing, right? But that didn't happen, and I think actually the French winemakers went to Chile, and then the Chilean winemakers went to Argentina. So it did actually make a lot more sense. So actually, Liz and Paul said great tasting, was equally apprehensive, but bloody loved it. Sue agrees with me and Lizzie about infinite thought experiments.
I'd stop listening when you
infinite
start
bottles.
talking about that.
Would open this one more frequently.
Me too.
And also then said, muchas gracias, señores. Which is Spanish for cheers, cocker. Yeah, great tasting, really, really interesting. The last time we did something like that, we did the altitude and attitude tasting. Do you remember doing that one? Because that was
absolutely not. Was I asleep by the end of it? That's about right.
There was only one where you fell asleep by the end.
That's true. But it will forever, I will forever be reminded about it every single time we do this.
Yeah, like an alte Junge.
In my defense, we had 6 tastings that day, so you know it's fine.
But yeah, so because taking a single grape, what grape goes across altitudes? Well, it's Malbec, isn't it? Really. But this was a really.
Oh, Arsenal's got more points. Yeah. Sorry.
I would be the most.
There were 3-1 down.
It would be the most Spursy thing that Arsenal
they are
could
throwing it real hard. Throwing it real hard at the moment. As a
As
City fan over here, I am delicious.
Well,
Can have some more.
Sue says that Manca accent is coming well. How fucking dare you? I have worked very hard to maintain a non-Mancunian accent right here. But I fucking tell you anyway. Spursy bastards. Anyway, right, we're gonna fuck off because my dad's in the other room through there and he's ordered us some pizzas.
Actually, you're not in the other room.
Yeah, you're not here to bang around. Do you think that was popping?
Yeah.
No, my dad's here. He's staying for the weekend.
Oh,
he's not watching.
Hi, Dad. And there's actually Domino's.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've got. Why is he not joining in? Why is he not here doing this with us? It would be amazing. Anyway,
because he only arrived partway through. But anyway, we're going to go. Thanks very much, guys. Peace and love.
Hey, guys, thanks a lot.
God bless Haile Selassie.
Take care.
If you haven't booked on already, please book on to the Cardiff Friday tasting or the California Dreaming tasting. And we'll have more coming early next week as we put our summer schedule together of wines that we're going to taste on the live tastings. Guys, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next one.